By this point, everyone has pretty much ganged up on Sar, and he's fighting for his life, doing absolutely everything he can just to hold them off. Saya watches with his mouth hanging open, then suddenly connects the dots and realizes everyone who's fighting right now had all eaten the crystal cores before. The realization made him feel uneasy, leaving him drenched in cold sweat. Our boy, meanwhile, tells Saya that at least he isn't completely hopeless. Saya goes on to lay out his thoughts, realizing the crystal cores clearly come with brutal side effects, ones that even 12th level folks can't resist. Furthermore, anger crept in as he decided the two officers were wildly irresponsible because something this serious deserved more than a casual warning or two. Anyway, he can't help feeling lucky, since he never got a single core along the way. What he once thought was bad luck suddenly looks like a blessing. Still, confusion follows right after. He asks himself why he was affected earlier despite never absorbing a single core. Could the side effects actually spread? That's when our boy immediately points out the obvious and tells him that what he said had nothing to do with it, and the reason he was affected was simply that he's weak. The comment stings hard, and Saya tries to protest and argue back, but after a moment of thought, he realizes that's painfully accurate, and his face turns bright red. Then he looks at Lu Sheng and quickly notices something strange. Since they are both 11th level, yet whatever he was about to say gets swallowed the moment he remembers how just mysterious and unreadable our guy felt to him. Lu Sheng, meanwhile, examines the situation and remarks that if his guess is right, then there must be something or someone not far from them affecting the magnetic field of the entire area. The two follow the direction of his gesture as he continues, noting that this presence amplifies emotions to an extreme level, making everyone irrational and violently unstable, as if they're being gripped by an unseen hand and toyed with at will. The realization leaves them shaken. They can't even imagine what kind of existence could pull off something like this. Lu Sheng further analyzes that it's magnifying the dark energy left inside the crystal cores by hundreds, even thousands of times, to the point that people nearby, who never absorbed anything, are still being affected. He then asks what kind of creature they think could do that. The question alone makes them gulp nervously. Tungsten is the first to connect the dots, immediately concluding that whatever it is must far surpass 12th level, possibly even a commander-level beast, or equivalent to the peak of 13th level. Seeing Lu Sheng didn't reject the idea, Saya, on the other hand, starts trembling and insists that it can't be right. He reasons that 13th level existences usually only show up in core star sectors, some even dominating in their respective star systems, and running into something like that the moment they step into the battlefield feels absurdly unfair. The thought alone makes his whole body shake, and no matter how hard he tries to calm down, the sheer cruelty of that luck completely overwhelms him. The two idiots can only cling to each other for comfort, silently agreeing that their situation is downright tragic. Lu Sheng, however, is already scanning the surroundings, because Huang Ji is nowhere to be seen anymore. Thinking back on Huang Ji's earlier actions, Lu Sheng analyzes that this clearly wasn't his first time here. In fact, he seems even more familiar with the battlefield than the two officers, so he must have sensed danger early and slipped away. By now, Tungsten has fully accepted Lu Sheng as the backbone of their little three-man squad, so he asks what they should do next, and whether they should leave as well. Saya, meanwhile, frankly tugs at Lu Sheng, insisting they need to run, immediately. He shouts at the top of his lungs, reasoning that they're talking about a 13th level beast. If they really run into something like that, none of them would even leave a complete corpse behind. His voice is loud enough to cut through the chaos, making the brawling crowd suddenly freeze and turn to stare at him. People begin closing in, and he instinctively backs up, asking why everyone is looking at him like that. That's when the fat dude finally steps in. He lets out a thunderous roar and demands to know if they all heard the part about a 13th level beast. Anyone who doesn't want to die needs to stop immediately. His aura erupts in an instant so overwhelming that it almost feels like Conqueror's haki, leaving everyone stunned on the spot and shocked by the officer's true strength. The fat guy crosses his arms and questions whether they really came all this way without understanding how the word danger is spelled. He looks at them with open disdain and tells them that even a tiny disturbance was enough to make them turn on each other. If they are so eager to die, they can keep fighting, because he's leaving first. Sar, however, refuses to believe there's actually a 13th level beast nearby. Hearing that, the fat guy just laughs. Sar questions what's so funny, and the officer explains that commander-class beasts naturally generate a dark force field that affects living beings within a certain range. What just happened to them was a direct result of being influenced by that field. Sar wants to argue back, but the others start discussing it among themselves. After all, if a force field alone can mess them up this badly, what would happen if they actually encountered the real deal? Some wondered if the gap between the 12th and 13th level really was that massive, and soon, fear began spread through the group. The fat guy shakes his head and notes that it's not quite that exaggerated. The real problem lies with them. He adds that if they hadn't swallowed the crystal cores directly and had instead waited to return to base to purify them with a special method, then the side effect wouldn't have been nearly as severe. That explanation only makes everyone angrier. Some reasoned that if there was a special method, why wasn't it mentioned earlier? They feel like they tore each other apart for nothing. The fat guy, however, reminds them that his job is simply to escort them to the base. He bluntly asks whether he looks like their daddy and why he should hand over secret techniques for free. Furthermore, he points out that he already warned them not to absorb the cores directly, and they ignored him anyway. The look of disgust flashes across his face as he further clarifies that before they reach the base, they don't even qualify as proper recruits. That was enough to shut everyone up. Still, the thought of a 13th level beast nearby sends another wave of panic through the group, and they start asking what they should do next. The fat guy softens slightly and tells them to relax. He notes that things aren't as bad as they're imagining, and explains that he has special scouting methods that can detect the general direction of a force field. As long as they detour around it, they'll be fine. The female officer then adds that unless they're extraordinarily unlucky, nothing will happen. She snaps her fingers, and a radar-like projection appears in the air, and she tells them that all they need to do is avoid the marked red zones. Seeing how calm the two officers are, everyone finally relaxes a little. As they study the coordinates, Saya is left stunned because the thing's location lines up exactly with the spot Lu Sheng pointed out earlier. That coincidence makes Lu Sheng seem even more mysterious in his eyes. Lu Sheng himself, meanwhile, appears lost in thought. Sar then starts complaining again, pressing them to explain what extraordinarily unlucky actually means and demanding they be more transparent. The two officers look a bit helpless, clearly fed up, but to keep him from causing more trouble, they explain anyway. Apparently, one possibility is that the beast suddenly changes position and runs straight into their detour. Another, even worse possibility, is that they've already been targeted. The explanation makes everyone's hair stand on end. All of a sudden, they can't shake the feeling that something unseen is watching them. At this point, no one dares to ask questions anymore, and no one causes trouble either. Still, a few people eventually realize that the first one to mention the 13th level beast was Saya. That said, most of the attention quickly shifts to Tungsten instead. After all, he's clearly the strongest in the squad, and no one believes a mere 11th level like Saya could actually notice something that important. Meanwhile, the fat officer also starts paying attention to Tungsten, but almost immediately realizes someone is missing from the team. Huang Ji is gone. His partner shrugs it off and remarks that it doesn't really matter, commenting that a seasoned old fox like that naturally has his own way of surviving, especially after staying alive through so many trips. With that small interruption over, the group continues moving forward. Saya quietly asks Lu Sheng whether it's really fine to just follow the officers like this. Lu Sheng notes that the emotional influence of the beast's force field feels somewhat similar to the emotion manipulation used in the divine crystal path. However, the psychic power he cultivated from it allows him to control 4 different emotions right now, which is already far stronger than what a 13th level beast has shown so far. Still, he can't be sure whether what they're feeling is only a tiny fraction of the beast's power, or if Old Duan's divine crystal path is simply far more terrifying than he originally thought. Personally, he leans toward the latter. After all, that path is considered a 15th level martial path, comparable to the stellar path itself. That realization makes him conclude that he should further temper his psychic strength and emotional control, as it could come in handy later. With that in mind, he starts training quietly while on the move. Under the guidance of the 2 officers, the team's route becomes erratic, with frequent detours and uneven stop times. They still run into more monsters now and then, but unlike before, no one seems particularly eager to fight anymore. Suddenly, the fat guy halts. Some people immediately grow anxious, wondering how long it will take to reach the base at this pace. Others start worrying about what happens if the commander beast catches up. Saya, meanwhile, discreetly asks Lu Sheng whether he thinks they can actually make it there alive. Tungsten can't help but ask, somewhat speechless, how an 11th level like him can be this timid. Saya fires back and asks whether Tungsten really isn't worried at all. Tungsten, instead, breaks into a grin and admits that he's actually kinda happy. Saya instantly decides his buddy must be insane. But Tungsten explains that what he's happy about is the fact that before leaving, his wife had just given birth to their 8th child. He even jokes that by the time he gets home, there might be a few more waiting for him. Saya is left utterly speechless. In his mind, how is it something to celebrate when you're away and your wife is having more babies? This bizarre exchange, however, actually traces back to our boy because his abilities have improved to the point where emotions now blend seamlessly into reality instead of feeling abrupt and artificial like before. Even so, the mention of children makes him think about his own. He can't help wondering whether by the time he returns to Yamu, he will get the chance to see his own child. Unfortunately, once inside the battlefield, all contact with the outside world is completely cut off, which is just another strange quirk of this space. While he's lost in thought, the fat guy closes his eyes and spreads out his mental perception. After a short while, he notes that it's safe to continue moving. That's when Saya suddenly realizes Sar is nowhere to be seen. Of course, Saya isn't the only one, but when the girl wanted to say something, he quickly cuts her off and decided to talk about it later. He notes that whatever happened can wait until they reach the base. Lu Sheng feels a little confused when Sar manages to leave the team without him even noticing, which feels kinda off. Though in most people's eyes, it doesn't seem like a bad thing. So no one really dwells on it. However, as they continue moving forward, things start turning strange. The team moves for more than half a day, but when they count heads again, 3 more people are missing. This time, even the 2 officers are getting anxious. Panic quietly spreads through the group. Some commented that somehow these people just vanish without a sound, and the thought that the next one could be them starts gnawing at everyone. A heavy, oppressive fear takes root, and Lu Sheng notes that something is seriously wrong now. By this point, the woman suspects the worst-case scenario has come true, and it has become painfully obvious that the beast has them locked on. She rushes over to her buddy and tells him they need to contact the base and request a 13th-level powerhouse to come pick them up. Turns out, the fat guy has already sent word to Lord Skeleton Blade, who is currently rushing over. Hearing that, the woman finally exhales in relief, remarking that if it's him, then the situation should still be manageable. Now all they can do is stay put and stall for time, hoping to meet up safely with the reinforcement. That said, they still need to inform the rest of the team to keep emotions from spiraling further. The 2 officers give a brief explanation to the group, glossing over the most alarming details. Even so, it's enough to calm everyone down a little. Saya's expression turns grim as he realizes they really have been targeted. Tungsten feels the same, but knowing a 13th level is coming to protect them makes him far less anxious. That's when Lu Sheng cuts in and rejects the optimism outright. He stares into the distance and slowly, deliberately asks them, what if, just what if, they don't make it in time to meet the reinforcement. Saya is completely bamboozled after hearing all that, and asks whether Lu Sheng is basically implying they're just gonna die anyway. Our boy just smiles, then remarks that there's no need to be so pessimistic, and tells him that if things were really that bad, they can always just wait for the right moment and run, which leaves the 2 of them staring at each other wide-eyed. Meanwhile, the rest of the group clearly doesn't think that far ahead. Quite a few people believe they're already past the halfway point to the base, and that with a short rest, reaching there safely should be doable. With that thought fresh in their minds, they quicken up their pace, hoping to meet up with reinforcements as soon as possible. Even so, as time drags on, the feeling of unease keeps spreading. People continue to vanish from the group, and by the 5th stop, the number of missing has already climbed to 8. At this point, the expressions of the 2 officers turn downright ugly, while everyone else starts feeling like they're next. Suspicion crept in, and they begin distancing themselves from each other, and what was once an elite force drawn from more than a dozen star sectors quickly turned into a pack of scared puppies. Suddenly, the fat man calls for everyone to halt and announces that there's no need to move forward anymore. He decides they'll hold their ground and wait for Lord Skeleton Blade to find them, confident that once reinforcements arrive, every problem will sort itself out. Even so, he isn't fully at ease himself because this kind of situation is honestly first for him too, and this is the only choice he can think of. Lu Sheng stays near the back, calmly observing, before a faint smile forms on his face. He notes that this is getting interesting. Ever since Sar and Huang Ji started disappearing, he's been closely monitoring everyone in the group with his psychic power, including the two officers. He calls it mental surveillance because, after all, it's about coverage. It's like the difference between someone standing in a room and only seeing what's in their line of sight, versus a camera that captures the entire room at once. The officers are like the people inside the room, watching over the team, while Lu Sheng is sitting in the control room, seeing everything. In other words, the team itself is the first layer, the officers the second, the crowd the third, and Lu Sheng the fourth. And yet, even then, when the head count comes up short, he still has no idea how that person vanished and only knows it happened instantly. He studies the others, then looks up at the sky, realizing there must be someone standing on a fifth layer above them all. Just then, his expression shifts. He starts scanning his surroundings, the sudden change leaving the two nearby completely confused. The strange behavior from our boy was all because just moments ago, two more people disappeared, and our boy pressed a hand to his head, trying hard to recall what they looked like, but their faces blurred in his memory, slipping away no matter how hard he tried to remember. A bead of cold sweat slides down his face, and for the first time, even he feels a chill run through him. Lu Sheng knows for a fact that memory loss isn't something supposed to happen to him. He notes that even a random passerby he brushed shoulders with decades ago would still have a clear face in his mind, let alone someone he met recently. He takes a deep breath and clenches his fist as a sense of unease slowly creeps in. Reflecting on it, he concludes that the one standing on the fifth layer must possess some bizarre ability that could even affect memories. At that point, he decides relying on psychic power alone isn't going to work anymore. He reflected that to whom is behind all this, his own mental perception is nothing more than a giant web full of holes. As a result, he can't lock onto the target at all, and could even end up backfiring on him. He glances around again, briefly unsure of what to do next. Meanwhile, the panic within the group intensifies. Some people are already on the verge of breaking down. That's when Lu Sheng's thoughts shift to emotions. He almost forgets the fact that he can manipulate emotions. Even if his mastery isn't on the same level as the person behind all this, it should still be enough to fish out some clues. Currently, he has control over anger, sorrow, fear, and joy. He then lifts a hand, and strands of energy quietly spread out, landing on everyone in the group without drawing any attention. All he needs to do now is link their emotional states and monitor them. He notes that the group is already drowning in anxiety, so the first three emotions exist in everyone to some degree, while joy is almost completely absent. He further inspects the group, confirming that people are growing visibly anxious, with some regretting ever coming here and others chiming in and venting non-stop. Then he activates his ability. Instantly, the entire group burst into laughter. For no clear reason, at the worst possible moment, everyone start recalling the funniest memories of their lives. One man thinks about his cheating ex falling into a pit of filth. Another recall the day he lost his virginity. One way or another, everyone is suddenly in great spirit. Lu Sheng keeps observing, calmly counting heads through the emotional link. Then, all of a sudden, one of the threads at the back of the group snap. The emotional seed there goes dark, so he turns to look behind him and immediately realizes it has begun. A man who was laughing just moments ago suddenly turns red-eyed, rage flooding his face as he grits his teeth and strides toward the opposite direction. Yet the people around him act as if nothing is happening. At this moment, aside from Lu Sheng, no one even notices the man leaving. That was all our boy needed to know. Lu Sheng reflects that the person in the dark is so much stronger than everyone in the group. Not only can they not detect what is happening, they also have no way to stop it. Lu Sheng knows that if he steps out right now, he'll instantly become the obvious target like the classic bird that sticks its head out first. That being said, part of him still wants to personally experience what the dude is capable of. It's already clear that the one hiding in the dark is a master at playing with emotions. Maybe clashing with someone like that could be hugely beneficial, but there's always that chance of him losing, especially since he has no idea what happened to those who had already wandered off. Gritting his teeth, he ultimately decides to give it a try. After all, the guy is probably just 13th level, and there's no real reason for him to be afraid. With determination in his eyes, our boy quietly moves to the back of the group, blending in among the weakest members, who he thinks are likely the next targets. And he's absolutely right. Before long, someone right beside him gets hit. The guy's temperament flips instantly, getting mad out of nowhere, and no one notices the sudden outburst, nor does anyone notice him leaving on his own. Lu Sheng, however, casually pats the man on the shoulder and asks if he's okay, fully expecting such an abnormal move to draw attention. And just like that, he was hit too. Lu Sheng allows the strange energy to invade without resisting. His expression shifts as images start looping violently in his mind, scenes of him being bullied, mocked, humiliated. Each memory feels painfully fresh, as if it happened yesterday. One after another, they pile up, dragging out frustration, irritation, resentment, and finally, pure anger. He clutches his head, his face twisting as he mutters curses under his breath. Then, with a roar, terrifying energy erupts outward, surging as if it's about to tear free from his body. The power turns inward, consuming itself, and in mere seconds, his entire body was covered in flame. Meanwhile, the real version of our boy strolls over with his hands in his pockets, calmly and curiously sizing up the scene. At this point, he already understands how the dude manipulates people's emotions, and frankly, he finds it a little disappointing. He notes that the dude fell for it immediately, all because he tested things with nothing more than a clone. Lu Sheng takes a deep breath and blows forward, causing the strange fire to let out a sharp scream before dispersing completely. As we return to the real world, the people nearby slowly regain their senses. The affected man scratches his head in confusion, having no idea what just happened. Meanwhile, our guy starts sending mocking messages toward the one hiding in the shadows, telling him train for another 100 years before playing more tricks. While all this was happening, the space around him suddenly stirred again, and our boy can practically picture the glare and the rage of the other side. Just as he starts laughing, that sensation returns once more. He's dragged back into the emotional space again. This time, our boy simply waits in silence, then remarks that there's at least some improvement. Standing before him now is a much larger creature. Even so, Lu Sheng doesn't feel the slightest bit worried. Instead, he decides to prepare a small return gift. He clenches his fist, then opens his palm, energy spilling out as a massive gust of wind roars forward and slams straight into the creature. After that, he even strikes a pose, casually noting that the opponent doesn't seem all that impressive. Either the enemy is just too weak, or Lu Sheng himself is simply too strong. Maybe it's both. That brief exchange still leaves him with some gains, especially when it comes to controlling emotions. Some while later, the thing sneaks in several more times, but each attempt gets disrupted by Lu Sheng, one interference after another, to the point where the other side's irritation becomes obvious. Somewhere in the void, a blood-red eye locks onto this place, staring viciously, yet no one else can sense it. Not even the two officers who are more focused on what they should do next, because even without moving an inch, people are still disappearing. Their discussion doesn't escape Lu Sheng's notice. He feels a bit stuck himself. Even though he's messed with the guy in the shadow multiple times, he still hasn't been able to stop every single success. The officers continue calming everyone down, telling them to stay put and wait for reinforcements to arrive. That clearly isn't the response Saya was hoping for. He feels everything about this situation is way too bizarre, with no clue where the missing people have gone. Tungsten asks Saya what they should do next, and Saya starts panicking as well. That's when Lu Sheng walks over and tells them not to worry, saying they just need to wait. Looking into the distance, he announces that the reinforcement should be arriving very soon. When Saya sees Lu Sheng return, he rushes up and hugs him, genuinely relieved, having thought Lu Sheng might have disappeared too. Over the next stretch of time, the guy in the shadow refuses to give up and makes several more attempts. But with everyone gathered closely together, our boy finds it much easier to keep watch. Each time, he intercepts things smoothly. After a few back and forths, and especially after the third failed attempt, the guy finally seems to give up. Just then, the fat man grows visibly excited and announces that at most half a day remains before reinforcement arrives. That news lifts everyone's spirits, and cheers break out across the group. As the minutes ticked by, people became less anxious. Before long, half a day passes. Everyone suddenly looks in the same direction as a figure rapidly flies toward them from afar. But just as that happens, the fat man finishes a call and reports that Lord Skeleton Blade has been held up by something and still needs more time before arriving. Hearing that, everyone looks back to the sky and begins wondering if that's the case. Then who is coming this way? A sharp sense of unease rises in the female officer's chest as she stares into the distance. As the figures draw closer, everyone finally realizes it's not just one person flying back, but several, and leading the group is none other than Sar. Saya, meanwhile, freezes for a second, then said it's the missing people returning. He wipes the sweat off his forehead, noting that he almost got scared to death, but then mutters that it's a shame Sar didn't just die out there. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng immediately sensed something's off. He notices a strange aura clinging to them, and more importantly, those weird threads hovering above their heads, like invisible strings. And it became painfully obvious. This is that guy's doing. He quickly concludes that the guy in the shadows finally lost patience and decided to act directly, though still hiding in the dark. Lu Sheng mentally remarks that this kind of person is a total coward, the type that never shows his face. At the same time, the two officers snap into action. They clearly see the problem too, drawing their weapons on instinct. One grips a spear, the other a pair of daggers, positioning themselves front and back. The whole thing reminds Lu Sheng of those guys who hide in the back, pulling strings and controlling everything from the shadows. Even though the ones returning are technically teammates, nobody actually rushes forward to greet them. Anyone who's made it to this level isn't stupid. Pretty much everyone can tell the atmosphere is way too unsettling. In fact, several people instinctively step back, staring at Sar and his group with open caution. Sar breaks the silence, casually explaining that they just left the team for a bit, and asks if pulling weapons is really necessary. His tone sounds relaxed, as if this whole thing is no big deal. However, the fat guy clearly disagrees. He comments that whether it's serious or not isn't Sar's call, and says that leaving the team without permission needs a clear explanation. Otherwise, being sent back would be the lightest punishment. That's when Sar's expression shifts slightly. He admits that leaving the team was their fault, then explains it was because he discovered a massive colony of beasts. According to him, it's a perfect hunting ground packed with crystal cores. He further explains that if he had reported it beforehand, the officers would have never agreed, which is why they acted on their own. The female officer finds his explanation strange, but before she can respond, someone behind Sar steps in and tells her Sar is telling the truth. He notes that the whole reason they entered this place was to grow stronger, and crystal cores are the fastest way to do that, so he doesn't think they did anything wrong. Another person joins in, reasoning that even if they split off temporarily, everyone made it back safely in the end. For a moment, the female officer can't decide. She turns to the fat officer and asks for his opinion. Before he can answer, Sar speaks again. He waves his hand, clearly believing actions speak louder than words. The next second, the bracelet on his wrist lights up, forming a small vortex as a massive pile of crystal cores spills onto the ground. He adds that this is their gesture of apology. The entire group freezes. Sar then tells them this is only half of what they gained on this trip, and they're willing to share all of it with everyone. In exchange, he asks that the officers allow them back into the team and drop the matter entirely. Saya stares at the mountain of crystal cores on the ground, stunned, noting that there's already this many, and this is only half. Some people even start thinking Sar must have dug up a whole ass grave to get this many crystal cores. Meanwhile, Tungsten stays much calmer. He first notes how terrifying the power boost would be if someone fully absorbed all these cores, and not to mention the officers already mentioned, there were secret methods to offset the side effects, making the cores even more desirable. But not everyone shares the same level of composure, and quite a few of them is already inching forward. Greed is basically written all over their faces. The moment they realize these cores might be shared with everyone, several people immediately turn around and begin asking the officers to show mercy. The fat officer quickly notices what Sar is trying to do here. He realizes Sar is using the entire team as leverage, which only confirms his suspicion that this guy isn't acting out of kindness. Meanwhile, our boy finds it surprising that Sar, for some reason, is still putting on the act. However, he stays patient, waiting to see what kind of game they are trying to play. Soon after, the two officers put away their weapons and slowly descended. Sar steps forward as well, saying that as long as the officers agree, he'll offer additional thanks once they return to base. He then moves closer to the fat officer, lowers his voice, and tells him that he's also willing to share the coordinates of that beast colony. The two officers exchanged a glance, and they gave each other a small nod. Sar assumes that means approval. He claps his hands, about to say something else, but suddenly gets cut off. The fat officer's voice turns noticeably cold as he remarks that Sar seems to have become unusually polite after stepping out for a bit. He admits that while he doesn't know Sar very well, he clearly remembers that with Sar's personality, there's no way he'd normally address them as officers, let alone casually hand over such a massive pile of crystal cores to share with everyone. To him, Sar's change is way too drastic. Being stared at like that makes Sar's expression shift immediately. He tries to come up with more excuses, saying stuff like how he's reformed and changed, then ask what he's trying to imply. The fat officer notes that Sar's argument does make some sense, so he says he's willing to believe him at least for now. Sar instantly looks relieved, though he looked like he had had enough. However, the fat officer then followed up saying that whether he is truly trustworthy will have to be personally verified once Lord Skeleton Blade arrives. He then adds that when the time comes, both of them will speak up on Sar's behalf, so there's no need to worry. Hearing this, Sar's face darkens instantly. If one listens closely, one can even hear his teeth grinding. He clenches his fist as killing intent surges out of him. The people behind him also begin moving closer, saying the officers are being too heartless. At that point, someone behind Sar completely drops the act. One of them remarks that he already said talking was pointless, and they should have just attacked instead of wasting time. Another adds that with their current strength, they could openly massacre everyone here without any issue. Sar snaps back at them, saying their master liked to do things this way, and asks what he's supposed to do about that. Right after saying this, he suddenly charges towards the female officer, saying how he's been fed up with her bullshit. The two officers instinctively draw their weapons again, but by the time they react, Sar is already right in front of them. With a mischievous grin, he launches his attack. The girl looks completely stunned as a massive blast erupts, visible from miles away. Both officers retreat in a flash, barely dodging it, but what shocks them even more is realizing Sar now has 5 rule galaxies fused into his body. The fat officer immediately points out that Sar used to only have 3. Now, with this level of power, he admits that the two of them aren't his match anymore. Seeing their reactions, Sar laughs and tells the others to join in and give them a proper show. The moment he finishes speaking, the rest charge forward. The closest guy raises his weapon to counterattack, only for it to snap in half instantly. The strike follows through, cutting him down in one clean motion. At that point, everyone finally realizes this isn't just about Sar, but rather every single one of them has gotten stronger. These people who were once completely average in the team are now carrying multiple rule galaxies as well. Even though there are only 8 of them, they charge in like wolves among sheep, instantly overwhelming the entire group. Even when several people gang up on one, none of them can block a single hit. When one teammate gets sent flying past him, Saya nearly jumps out of his skin. He stares at the scene in disbelief and remarks that these guys must have had Viagra or something, because somehow they've all reached Sar's strength before he disappeared. Lu Sheng speaks up at that moment and asks Saya if he still hasn't figured it out yet. He notes that these people are no longer the ones who left earlier, and he means that literally. Tungsten immediately adds that he feels an extremely unpleasant aura coming off them, which surprises Lu Sheng a bit. He even thinks to himself that Tungsten has a sharper sense than expected. Saya starts panicking and asks if Lu Sheng is saying these people are imposters. Clearly, he still doesn't get it, so Lu Sheng explains it anyway. He tells him the people themselves haven't changed, but they're no longer their own masters anymore. In other words, it's like they signed their lives away. They're not the same anymore. Suddenly, Lu Sheng notices something else. As he focuses on the battlefield, he spots a faint black shadow tugging at both sides of the fight. It's the kind of thing you can only see with extreme concentration. From its presence alone, it feels eerily similar to the black shadow he once sensed in an underwater cavern back on Earth. Still, he's not sure whether that thing is also watching him. Meanwhile, the two officers are going all out just to barely hold Sar back. They're the only ones who can even manage that. Everyone else is completely helpless against the remaining 7, getting utterly crushed. Sar keeps mocking them, saying they're ridiculously weak, while the rest of the team gets absolutely destroyed. After knocking the 2 officers away, Sar suddenly reaches out and grabs one guy by the neck. The fat officer screams in desperation, telling Sar to stop. At that point, the man is already foaming at the mouth, and no matter how hard he tries, he simply can't pry Sar's fingers loose. Sar just smiles and notes that there's actually no real conflict between them, and there's no need to fight like this. He loosens his grip slightly and asks the man why he entered the outer space battlefield in the first place. The man trembles as he answers. He came to grow stronger. Sar bursts into laughter and says exactly, that's everyone's goal. Since they're all here to become stronger, and the opportunity is right in front of them, why refuse it? With that, he lets go, dropping the man to the ground. A pile of crystal cores spills out in front of him, and Sar tells him to take as many as he wants. He notes they're all his, as long as he's willing to join them. He then picks up one of the crystal cores and pushes it straight to the man's mouth. The man freezes for a split second, clearly shocked, but then takes it anyway. He's just about to say he agrees when a furious shout cuts him off, calling him an idiot. When they turned around, they saw that the fat officer was clutching his shattered ribs, forcing himself upright through the pain. He asks the man if he even understands what he's agreeing to before nodding along so easily. He questions whether there's such a thing as free in this world and tells him to actually use his brain. He then adds that in this place, almost every mistake can be forgiven, except one that is becoming a beast's lackey. The last few words practically come out as a roar as he asks Sar if he really won't regret this. That shout snaps everyone out of it. The people who were just moments away from being swayed immediately come back to their senses and hurriedly distance themselves from Sar. Sar's veins bulge as rage floods his face. He coldly comments on how those two are unbelievably annoying. The next second, his eyes turn blood red, and a chilling grin spreads across his face, saying that he's already stopped pretending to be human. Saya doesn't even know what word to use for this situation anymore, but he genuinely can't understand how someone can betray the human race like this. Sar, however, doesn't think he's done anything wrong. He keeps flaunting his power, showing everyone just how strong he is now. In his mind, without joining them, how could anyone ever reach this level? He raises one hand, and a wave of space-twisting energy shoots toward the two officers. In the next instant, the sound of bones snapping echoes through the air. To everyone's surprise, the strange energy clung to their arms actually started to twist and break both of their arms. Without hesitating, the two officers immediately sever their own arms to stop whatever effect is spreading. Even in such a miserable state, they don't back down. Instead, they glare at Sar and mock him, saying that no matter how strong he is, he's still nothing more than a beast's watchdog. They point out that with Sar's talent, he could have reached this level sooner or later on his own, even having the potential to break into the 13th level or even the 14th level. But that's none of his concern anymore, because he had just ended up being a worthless lackey. And moreover, he'll never break past his current level for the rest of his life. So is he smart? Or just painfully stupid? That hits Sar right where it hurts. Saya never misses a chance to pile on, so he jumps in as well, mocking Sar by saying everyone here is a once-in-a-generational talent from their own star sectors, all with limitless futures ahead of them. He asks why anyone would trade that away for short-term power and eternal infamy as a beast's lackey. He further notes that any commander-level beast caps at level 13 anyway, so how could it possibly let its subordinates surpass it? The ridicule keeps coming to the point where even Lu Sheng can't help but chuckle. The rest of the group quickly follows Saya's lead, and the atmosphere shifts completely. Surrounded by laughter and mockery, Sar finally snaps. Completely enraged, he screams that he's going to kill everyone. Saya throws his hands up and starts pulling exaggerated faces, straight up clowning the guy, and those words hit Sar right in the gut. Sar immediately snaps, loses it on the spot, and charges in. He winds up his fist and swings hard, a hit so savage it nearly makes Saya lose control of his bladder. Luckily, the two officers jump in just in time and block it for him. Meanwhile, Sar is absolutely not done. He roars in rage and follows up with another heavy punch aimed straight at them. The problem is, both officers have already lost an arm, straight up got nerfed, and they simply can't withstand Sar's relentless assault. They're forced to retreat step by step, getting pushed back hard. Furthermore, the rest of the team has already fallen way behind. Some people are helping each other stumble away, but once things start looking truly bad, especially for the weaker ones, panic kicks in, and they scatter in all directions. Honestly, can't really blame them, as no one's here lining up to get their ass beaten today. Seeing everyone bolt, Saya quickly asks Tungsten whether they should fight or just run for it. Tungsten, for once, doesn't have an answer. And then suddenly, a sharp scream cuts through the chaos. Both of them snap their heads around and see the people who just ran suddenly rushing back, screaming, "There are beasts over there, tons of them." Saya stares into the distance in disbelief. Massive, grotesque creatures are emerging one after another, and just one glance tells him these things are no joke. Every single one of them looks terrifying, wearing eerie, twisted grins. He checks the other direction, and sure enough, it's the same story. Anyway, things escalate fast. Dense swarms of beasts start flooding in from all sides, appearing almost out of nowhere, leaving everyone completely stunned and clueless about what's even happening. Lu Sheng calmly began counting. It started with around a dozen, then the number kept climbing. 20, 30. In the blink of an eye, there are hundreds. Fear spreads instantly through the team, and everyone feels like this is the end. Even the two officers have never seen anything like this before, and they can't help but gulp nervously. And right at that moment of hesitation, Sar lands another brutal punch, sending them flying. He comments that they seriously thought they could escape, and remarks that they must have forgotten who the real owner of this space is. The fat guy gets smashed so hard he spits out blood, his glasses shatter on the spot, and all he can do is curse under his breath. Over on the other side, the female officer is shaking with rage, noting that Sar is truly beyond saving at this point. But instead of rallying the group, that realization just drags everyone deeper into despair. After all, Sar and his crew were already a nightmare to deal with, and now countless powerful beasts are surrounding them. Worse still, a beast swarm of this scale could crush an entire star sector 1,000 times over. At that point, everyone had come to one conclusion. There's nowhere left to run. Sar slowly raises one hand, clenches it tight, and announces that he'll give them one last chance. Join him or die. The crowd starts trembling uncontrollably, terror spreading across their faces, and sure enough, someone breaks first. A man in the crowd hesitantly raises his hand, shaking as he says he's willing to join. He's an 11th level named Carl. The very next second, he's yanked by the collar and flung into the air, dragged straight in front of Sar in the next scene. Sar beams at him, clearly pleased, and tells him this is the right choice, guaranteeing he won't regret it. By making this decision, Carl is officially safe. Carl hurriedly bows as he thanks Sar. He nods repeatedly, looking submissive. You can still see a hint of regret on his face, but it's overwhelmed by relief, the kind that comes from surviving a near-death moment. He reassures himself that it's fine now, that he's safe, and once the first person steps out, the rest follow fast. Soon, more and more hands go up, especially among the weakest members of the team. The trio watches as people around them keep surrendering, and Lu Sheng can't help but reflect that under real life and death pressure, dignity and principles get shoved aside. After all, reaching this level in their journey wasn't easy, and who actually wants to die? The crowd around Sar grows larger and larger, and before long they're even chatting and laughing with him. Some people start flattering him openly, asking him to look after them in the future, and Sar clearly enjoys every second of it. Lu Sheng thinks it over. Sure, being labeled a traitor sounds awful, but wasn't Sar the most talented among them, and didn't he make the same choice? As for being unable to break through to the 13th level, most people probably know their own limits. Reaching 12th level with 2 or 3 galaxy rules integrated into their bodies is already the ceiling for them, and 13th level is something they don't even dare to imagine. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here gambling on a miracle. He lets out a quiet sigh, lamenting that people are like that. Once they accept a choice, they'll naturally come up with countless reasons to justify it. Then he turns and asks the two behind him what they plan to choose. Saya stays silent for a moment before saying he wants to wait for Lord Skeletal Blade to arrive. He firmly believes that betraying humanity is the greatest crime in the universe, and in the outer space battlefield, anyone caught doing that will get executed on the spot. Meanwhile, Tungsten adds that going down that path wouldn't just damn them, it would drag their families and future generations into disgrace as well. Because of that, he decides to wait too. Lu Sheng doesn't say anything in response, but his expression makes it clear he's satisfied with their answers. The fat officer overhears the exchange as well and for once allows a smile to show that he looks genuinely relieved. He asks Sar if he sees it now, pointing out that not everyone is so desperate to cling to life. But Sar answers with a sinister laugh, mocking the idea that some so-called big shot would actually rush over to save them. The officer immediately demands to know what he means, and Sar casually fires back that for a 13th level, this distance is almost nothing. If that person were coming, he would have arrived long ago. He then further reveals something even more chilling, saying that the great Oblivion Lord has already wiped the memory of coming to rescue them straight from that man's mind. As he says this, Sar laughs louder, remarking that the guy is probably still sitting comfortably in his basement, sipping tea, while only these fools are standing here waiting. The two officers are completely stunned and can't bring themselves to believe it. Saya freezes for a second too, half convinced and half doubting. But if that's actually true, then they're absolutely done goofed. Panicking, he quickly asks Lu Sheng what they should do. Lu Sheng doesn't answer right away. Still, looking at his calm expression, unchanged no matter the situation, Saya can't help feeling that Lu Sheng might actually have a plan. Even so, the thought that Skeletal Blade might never show up is terrifying. That's when Lu Sheng finally speaks up, asking whether they really believe whatever Sar says, questioning if Saya is some obedient little lamb who takes every word at face value. Cutting off their near panic, he tells them to think about whether Skeletal Blade really has his memory erased. If someone could casually wipe the memories of a 13th level, that would at least require a 14th level being or higher. And honestly, are they really worth that kind of existence personally stepping in? What Lu Sheng says actually starts to make sense, and Saya thinks it over, realizing he might be onto something. He reflected that Sar really is just trying to scare them and rescue should still be coming. But Lu Sheng shakes his head again, noting that, judging from the current situation, relying on outside help isn't realistic either. If rescue were actually on the way, Sar wouldn't have the leisure to stand here playing recruitment games. Saya gets confused all over again, thinking that coming late or not coming at all feels basically the same. Surely they wouldn't arrive just to collect their bodies, right? At this point, the choice in front of them is brutal. Either become a traitor or die on the spot, and there is no other option. Suddenly, Saya comes up with an idea. Maybe they could pretend to surrender first, then flip sides the moment rescue arrives. Tungsten thinks that sounds brilliant. Watching the two of them get excited, Lu Sheng can only feel speechless. As time passes, another large chunk of people voluntarily join Sar's side. The rest are either still hesitating or simply refuse to submit. Sar, however, is clearly done waiting. He announces that the opportunity has already been given, and if the rest want to die, that's not his problem. With a downward flick of his finger, the beasts surrounding them launch their attack all at once. Of course, joining isn't something you can just talk your way into. The people who surrendered earlier are ordered to fight as well. Sar tells them that each person must have at least one person's blood on their hands for the submission to count. If they refuse to do that, he smiles and declares that their fate will be exactly the same as the rest. The people who already switched sides suddenly look uneasy. It's obvious now that Saya's earlier idea wasn't unique to him, as plenty of them had the same thought. Then one of the beasts lets out a single roar, and that alone shakes several people so badly they can't even stay on their feet. At the edge of life and death, loyalty stops mattering. The traitors can only think about themselves, and in the next second, they rush forward as well. The two officers don't even have the breathing room to help anyone. Barely holding off a few of Sar's followers is already pushing them to the limit. Meanwhile, the people who didn't betray, especially the weakest ones, suddenly become hot targets in the eyes of those who surrendered. After all, they're way easier to kill. With such a massive gap in strength, many don't even get the chance to fight back before being captured. Saya instantly feels that something is seriously wrong. Right now, all odds are against them, and he honestly can't see any chance of survival. And in the brief moment he zones out, someone has already locked onto him. That person swings their weapon straight at Saya. Just as it's about to land, Tungsten rushes in and blocks it with his own arm. Saya is overwhelmed with gratitude, but before he can even react, two more people have their eyes on him. He immediately turns and runs, with both of them chasing right behind. Suddenly, a hand grabs him. He spins around and realizes it's Lu Sheng. His first instinct is relief, but that feeling fades just as fast. Lu Sheng is only 11th level just like him. Even if he's stronger than him, how much stronger could he really be? Regret hits Saya like a truck. He curses himself for listening to that bastard fortune teller in the first place. Even if life outside was rough and humiliating, at least it wouldn't have ended like this. Only now does he truly understand how precious life is. If he ever got another chance, he swore he'd never come back here again. Just as he completely gives up, a voice calmly tells him there's actually another option. Saya snaps his head up and hears Lu Sheng saying that besides becoming a traitor or dying, there's a third choice. Saya blanks for a moment and asks what it is. Lu Sheng tells him it's simple. Take down Sar, wipe out all the beasts, and deal with the traitors too. Saya's eyes go wide as he tries to process that. In the next second, his jaw practically hits the ground. He seriously thinks Lu Sheng has lost his mind. To him, this sounds like saying you don't want to die so you'll just keep living, or the fact that if someone is homeless, then he should just buy a house. Logically makes sense, sure, but is it actually doable? That's another story. He even starts to suspect Lu Sheng is joking, just trying to comfort him. Still, somehow that ridiculous suggestion does lighten his mood a bit. Saya gets back on his feet and pats Lu Sheng on the shoulder. Then, without warning, a violent surge of flames erupts straight into the sky. A terrifying energy, something he has never witnessed in his entire life, suddenly explodes out of Lu Sheng's body. Saya's eyes go wide in shock, staring as if he's just seen something completely impossible. Things start heating up, literally. A blinding glow ignites overhead and instantly hijacks everyone's attention. Back by tungsten, both he and Saya just freeze up, mouths hanging open looking above them. And by now, our boy has already swapped back into his real appearance, casually remarking that it's been a while since he's shown his face like this. Meanwhile, the crowd below is straight up stunned, and Lu Sheng quietly reflects that he almost forgot what it even felt like to actually throw hands. Anyway, after some aura farming, he opens his eyes, and in the next heartbeat, he's already behind one of the traitors. The guy gets hit by our guy's pressure and stumbles back like his soul just tripped over its own feet. Saya panics and warns him to be careful, noting the traitor is 12th level. But our guy just lets out a soft chuckle in response. The traitor admits he got spooked for a second, but then tells himself Lu Sheng is just bluffing because he's sure our guy is only 11th level. Then this dude goes full emo Wolverine, straight up sprouting a whole fan of pitch-black claws. He announces that a 1-level gap isn't exactly a miracle recipe, and he charges in like he's about to rewrite the plot. Dark energy detonates off his body, except Lu Sheng doesn't even move. He just looks at him, and the traitor immediately stopped in his tracks like he just headbutted into an invisible wall. A sonic boom ripples outward. Then we see the guy locked in place. Fear spreads across his face as he struggles, completely unable to understand why his body won't listen to him. Lu Sheng simply raises one hand. Then, under the traitor's confused stare, he flicks him away like a mosquito. Energy erupts outward. The traitor gets blasted into the distance, and the shockwave bullies everyone nearby. Poor Saya and Tungsten catch nasty friendly fire and go flying too. When the smoke clears, the traitor is nowhere to be seen, until a short while later, because right in front of Lu Sheng, all that's left are the traitor's legs. Just 2 legs. No upper body. That single snap flick moment leaves everyone stunned. Just then, the traitor's spirit drifts back in, still dazed, not even understanding how he's already reduced to nothing but a soul. He's about to celebrate surviving when he suddenly feels himself getting yanked away. He screams for someone to save him, only to be inhaled. Lu Sheng let out a little burp, completely unbothered, and asked who's next. The whole area goes silent while everyone tries to process what they just witnessed. But the fear hits harder than the confusion, and they immediately decide living is more important than loyalty. So the traitors scatter in every direction. Our guy doesn't actually chase. He just lightly waves a hand, and a tiny swirl of flame rises around him. One flick of that fire passes straight through a guy's head, and his face twists into agony before his head gets popped. The same thing happens again and again to the fleeing traitors, dropping them one by one like someone casually flipping switches. Bodies start falling from the sky, but their spirits just hang there, frozen in shock, still not believing how they ended up like this. But that's the least of their problems, because our guy starts collecting those souls like Pokemon, one after another. One of the traitors dares to glance back mid-escape, and he straight up says there's no way that guy is only 11th level, then calls our boy a monster. He's basically congratulating himself for dipping early, but that relief lasts about half a second. Just then, a massive hand suddenly blots out the sky over him. He instinctively looks up, panicking, blurting that he doesn't want to die, only he never even gets to finish the sentence before he's folded like paper. And yeah, that hand isn't some random power either. It's obviously Lu Sheng's projection, casually showing up to tell him he already came all this way, so he's not allowed to leave. All of this happens basically instantly, and of course it shocks everyone again. Saya can't help pointing out the obvious. Lu Sheng just deleted a whole batch of 12th level traders in the blink of an eye. But from Lu Sheng's perspective, crushing people a whole level above him is quite normal for him. Also what he expects from himself. Anyway, his focus shifts to where Sar is standing. Nobody around Sar dares to meet Lu Sheng's gaze. They call him a monster and sprint off. But Sar, for some reason, looks excited. He even remarks that it's unexpected that the team had someone like this hidden inside it, and notes it's a pleasant little surprise. He gives Lu Sheng credit for wiping those guys out, but then immediately downplays it, saying they were just mediocrities who only fused with a single strand of galaxy rules anyway. Still, he has to admit it. Lu Sheng's talent is clearly not below his, and that's when Sar's expression twists. He notes that if that's the case, then he can't let Lu Sheng keep living. He turns around and basically labels everyone cowards. A couple of people flinch and glance back, but most just keep running. Sar tells them not to be afraid, insisting that if everyone jumps Lu Sheng together, they can definitely kill him. So people start hesitating. They look at each other, calculating in real time whether turning back is smarter than running away. One guy says escaping is pointless, and they might as well team up with Sar and take Lu Sheng out. Another one of Sar's lackeys adds that no matter how insane Lu Sheng is, he can't possibly withstand all of them at once. That starts lighting a fire under the group, and more of them circle back, asking Sar what they should do next. Not long after, the traitors slowly close in on Lu Sheng, but our guy stays completely unbothered. And here's the difference. The ones standing behind Sar now aren't the same weak traitors from earlier. These are the original betrayers who came back with him, who were boosted by the beast's power, and likely more dangerous than the rest. When Sar tells them to release everything they've got, they all break into those sinister little smiles, like they've been waiting to finally show off. Our guy just looks at them, and actually seems a tiny bit interested. Meanwhile, Sar starts commanding the Beast Army too, basically demanding their assistance so they can combine forces and kill Lu Sheng together. The traitors hop onto the beast's heads like mounted raiders, and the whole squad charges in fast, closing the distance in seconds. Saya and Tungsten immediately realize this is bad, but the worst part is they can't do anything about it. Can't interfere, can't support, can't even get close enough to help their friend. Once the traitors finally lock into position, Sar gives the order to attack. Everyone rushes in at once. Meanwhile, our boy is still just standing there, hands in his pockets, straight up aura farming like the fight is happening for his entertainment. A giant claw drops toward him, and our boy simply comments that they're being way too loud. Anyway, he tells them to get lost, and the energy around him detonates outward. No one can even get close. The beasts carrying the traitors instantly recoil, stumbling backward, and the power coating the traitors themselves gets shattered on impact like glass. Even Sar looks stunned, forcing both hands up to block the pressure wave, barely holding his ground. When the dust settles, the traitors were scattered, thrown back, and looking absolutely miserable. That's when it finally clicks for them. Even with everyone attacking at full power, they still can't even get close to him. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng casually looks up and smiles, almost amused, and notes he didn't expect a random shout to have that much power. He remarks that he only meant to test out the strength of those 300,000 plus immortal cells in his body. But somehow even that golden core inside him got dragged into the mix. He reflects that the fusion of those two forces feels like a lion's roar technique, except obviously it's not some cheap martial arts novel version. This is absurdly stronger, to the point where it might actually qualify as one of his own arsenal. And here's the scary part. Our guy realizes he had been right all along. This fusion between the two isn't just simply addition. When these two powers combine, they amplify everything to a ridiculous degree. A small motion becomes a catastrophe. A casual gesture becomes a killing move. Even breathing could potentially turn into a powerful technique if he keeps refining it. But anyway, he also notices there are still a few trash mobs left standing, so he shifts his gaze back to the group. That alone makes the traitors practically soil themselves. And then Lu Sheng moves. He charges in and starts throwing hands. No fancy tricks needed, probably making up for the lack of action in recent chapters. Anyway, in mere seconds, dozens more traitors get erased from the count. For the remaining traders, they knew for a fact that they had run into a literal nightmare. For everyone else watching, this becomes one of those scenes they'll remember for the rest of their lives. Two officers hurry over to Saya and Tungsten, clearly shaken, and ask who Lu Sheng even is, since the two of them seem the closest to him. Saya looks like he's sleepwalking through a bad dream and, honestly, notes he has no clue either. Meanwhile, the beating doesn't stop. By this point, Sar is basically the only one still standing. He watches another one of his people fly past him like a rag doll, and the rage inside him finally boils over. He remarks that this was never supposed to happen, and he refuses, absolutely refuses, to allow anyone stronger than him to exist. Then this insane bastard does the unthinkable. He shoves his hand into his own chest, tears it open, rips out his own heart like he's grabbing an extra battery, and declares he needs more power, no matter what it costs. 5 different colors of Rule Galaxy energy surge straight into Sar's body, and his aura detonates in a single instant, spiking to a level that feels completely unreal. Something hideous takes shape around him, so wrong-looking that even the space nearby starts bent out of frame, and then it fully manifests, looking like a Slender Man silhouette. For Saya and the others, this isn't just pressure anymore. Even the officers can tell Sar is so much stronger, so powerful that if they ever dare to get close, they will for sure get deleted. The female officer is trembling so hard she can barely hold herself together, and she asks if this is Sar's final form. She can't help wondering if Lu Sheng can even withstand this. The fat guy forces himself to stay calm, but he's shaking too. He notes that even if Lu Sheng can't fully win, stalling should still be possible, and he's basically praying Skeletal Blade shows up in time to save them. Anyway, right as Sar is finishing his transformation, Lu Sheng suddenly appears out of nowhere and charges in, but Sar catches him with one hand, only to see our guy smile. He casually slips out of the grip, then starts circling Sar with ridiculous speed, landing hit after hit after hit. Meanwhile, Sar can barely even track him, swinging but kept missing. And after a while, Sar's confusion turns into genuine panic because our guy is just so fast. Lu Sheng, after toying with him for a bit, finally decides to be fair. He remarks that he'll give Sar a chance, adding that if Sar can hit him with a full-power attack, and if he manages to injure him, he will then spare his life today. Sar floats up, absolutely offended, and notes that Lu Sheng is being arrogant to the point of stupidity, then declares he's going to kill him. He grits his teeth and screams as energy starts condensing. Lu Sheng just smiles back, clearly pleased, because this is exactly what he wanted. Sar then launches his attack. The attack is dragging the air with it like it's pulling the entire world into the punch. When it made contact, a massive explosion detonated, and the shockwave began flipping everything around them. Even the people who already run far away still get rocked by the blast. The female officer, wide-eyed, points out that this is perhaps the 13th level power. Space itself looks like it got cracked under the impact. Sar starts mocking Lu Sheng for daring to take that punch head-on, bragging that he's basically comparable to the 13th level now, and insisting that Lu Sheng should be reduced to dust. When the dust settled, we saw fragments start falling off Lu Sheng. And if you look closer, his indestructible pants actually have a tear in them. That's when you know the punch is no joke. Lu Sheng just glances down, then calmly tells Sar to keep going. Sar can't believe what he's seeing and says it's impossible. But our guy isn't here for debate, so he orders him to continue. After a brief moment of stunned silence, Sar starts swinging again, punch after punch after punch, hammering Lu Sheng with everything he had. But every time it seems like it should be enough, Lu Sheng simply tells him to continue. The spectators can barely breathe watching this. Their hearts are in their throats. But what's truly insane is that Lu Sheng keeps remarking that it's too light. He keeps taunting Sar. Sar slips deeper into disbelief. He can't understand why Lu Sheng is still standing. The panic starts eating him alive until he throws another heavy blow, and this time, he finally manages to smash Lu Sheng down into the ground. Sar stands there heaving, panting hard, then flashes a brutal grin and asks if Lu Sheng finally understands how strong he is. Lu Sheng's body is visibly cracking more and more, but he still stands back up, and instead of fear, he looks disappointed. He asks if that's really Sar's limit. Then, right after saying it, the cracks start sealing up, the damage healing in real time. And Lu Sheng casually comments that if this is all Sar has, then he really is pathetic. Our boy then adds that even after Sar selling himself out, even after gulping down all that shady, corrupted power like a loyal dog, Sar is still this weak. Lu Sheng basically notes that if this is all he has, then Sar has officially become useless. Anyway, Lu Sheng gives a casual flick of his hand. Energy ripples outwards, so powerful that Sar can't even comprehend. Panic finally takes him for real. He screams for someone to save him, begging his master to step in and rescue him. That surge of power hits the onlookers like a cold slap. When the smoke clears, a black hole is hanging in the sky like a wound punched into space itself. And down below, Sar's body has already turned into fragments, raining onto the ground like broken debris. Meanwhile, his head is frozen with that unbelieving expression he wore right before death. This is the same Sar who had just understood 5 different galaxy rules, the same Sar who forcefully pushed himself to an almost 13th level with beast power, who used to make everyone feel despair and fear, and he just got instantly deleted. Nobody can understand it. Lu Sheng is supposedly only level 11, yet his combat power is this terrifying. The female officer can only remark that what they just witnessed feels like a miracle, maybe simply something that she's yet to understand. Saya is so shocked that his face basically stops working. He insists he has to be dreaming, and he tells Tungsten to remember to wake him up because he's going back to sleep. But Tungsten quickly notes it's real. Lu Sheng genuinely killed Sar, and honestly, Tungsten is dizzy too. Meanwhile, as all of this is still settling, Lu Sheng lifts his head and notes that the real one finally isn't going to hide anymore. A while later, another massive figure appears. This time, our guy could feel the pressure was so much heavier than anything Sar was putting out. But that's exactly what he is looking for. So he remarks that Sar was boring, and this is perfect, because now he finally gets to see what a true 13th level really looks like. Meanwhile, somewhere in space, Skeletal Blade is moving so fast he looks like a meteor ripping through space. The man barely leaves after images behind, and then demands the other side to resent the new coordinates immediately. However, the person on the other end sounded a bit worried, noting that Skeletal Blade hasn't even reached the new recruits yet. Turns out, on the way there, he ran into a commander-level beast. He had no choice but fight, but in the end, the beast got away. Anyway, the updated coordinates are sent over in a hurry. The man emphasizes that the energy fluctuations at the location have suddenly become chaotic and unstable, suggesting something must have gone wrong. Furthermore, he warned him to be careful. Skeletal Blade simply responds that he understands and accelerates again, silently hoping the others are still alive. Meanwhile, back on Lu Sheng's side, after Sar is taken out, the real nightmare finally shows itself. A massive figure slowly rises behind him. It looks like some grotesque octopus, with its enormous body twisting in midair while its eyes lock viciously onto our boy. The moment it appears, the entire space starts distorting. The air grows heavy, unstable. Even the people still holding weapons feel their legs go stiff under that overwhelming pressure. Then one of its tentacles lashes out, and what happens next looks straight out of a cursed hentai scene. The tentacle dives straight into a man's mouth. His eyes bulge instantly, veins popping, body swelling like it's about to burst. The monster's targets were mostly the traders who previously returned with Sar. Their bodies begin mutating, skin melts off, and muscles twist unnaturally. They tremble in agony as screams tear through the battlefield. One of them suddenly clamps down on a poor dude, while several others begin surrounding the remaining survivors. The fat officer stares in shock and notes that this is the true form of a level 13 commander beast. Furthermore, he explains that this creature specializes in corrupting and controlling mutated humans. The beast opens its mouth and starts chanting something incomprehensible, like a ritual spell echoing across the broken space. But our guy doesn't really care what nonsense he's muttering. His fist is already clenched, ready to throw hands. But then he notices something else. Waves of that corrupted energy are spreading outward toward the remaining survivors. That's when things get worse. He realizes he needs to get the survivors as far as possible, but at this point, he's already done all he reasonably can. If they still can't survive this, then all he can offer is a silent apology. Without hesitation, he slashes his hand through the air. The mutated humans are sliced apart instantly. Their bodies explode from the inside out. The blast is enormous, shockwaves tearing across space and launching Saya and the others straight into the air like rag dolls. When the smoke cleared, everyone else had blown out of the picture. It's just the two of them left. Lu Sheng makes the first move. He swings his fist, and the ground beneath him cracks instantly from the pressure alone. The impact alone feels like a small earthquake. Meanwhile, the giant eyeball on the monster's body lights up, glowing violently as energy spills outward in chaotic waves. The creature opens its mouth wide, and its tentacles lash forward. In the next second, to everyone's surprise, they pierce straight through Lu Sheng's body. Our boy lets out a low, muffled groan. Blood seeps from the corner of his mouth. The scene is so sudden that even the two officers can't process what they're seeing. Blood pours from the wounds as the tentacles pin him in place, while our guy's hand firmly grabs onto them. The fat officer drops to his knees on the spot, already imagining the worst-case scenario. Meanwhile, the female officer's eyes turn red as she wonders what the hell is taking Lord Skeletal Blade so long. The fat officer grits his teeth and remarks that an 11th level taking the full force strike of a level 13 commander beast is practically a death sentence. He notes bitterly that Lu Sheng is a once-in-a-generation prodigy, someone whose future growth would have been unimaginable if given time. Yet now, he's being forced into a life-or-death battle against a level 13 commander beast. Clutching at his missing arm, he curses his own helplessness. He hates that he has to stand here and watch a monster of a talent get strangled before his eyes. He demands to know why it had to turn out like this. Meanwhile, the seemingly lifeless Lu Sheng is slowly lifted into the air by the monster and dragged toward that massive eyeball. The beast continues muttering its strange gibberish, then a twisted grin spreads across its grotesque face. But then, our boy speaks. He calmly asks if this is really the power of a level 13. He even touches his pierced chest, and casually comments that the attack does pack quite a punch. But here's the thing. What our boy is about to show is completely different. He tells the monster that he's actually pretty lucky. After all, it's the first opponent to ever witness this particular form of his. The moment those words settle, flames begin rising around him. Behind Lu Sheng was his martial avatar. The monster seems to see a pair of eyes opening in the blazing inferno, staring into his soul. For a brief second, the octopus hesitates. Then it panics. Deciding not to take chances, the creature shoves Lu Sheng directly into its mouth, wrapping extra coils of tentacles around him for insurance, then bites down viciously. After that, it mutters more incomprehensible gibberish as if sealing the kill. In the distance, Saya screams Lu Sheng's name. Tungsten clutches his head in disbelief. From their perspective, it looks like it's over. Suddenly, a deep rumbling sound echoes in the distance. The monster's mouth starts vibrating violently. Then something blasts out from inside it, shooting straight into the sky. The light is so bright, and everyone was blinded on the spot. The beast's massive body begins trembling uncontrollably, as if it can't handle whatever just erupted from within. Cracks spread across its surface. Its flesh splits, then lets out a string of distorted gibberish, but judging from the tone, it's definitely not praising anyone. Then a sharp slash cuts across its neck. The head separates cleanly from the body, spinning several times midair before detonating from the inside out. Flames explode outward, and from within the blast, someone walks out, none other than our boy Lu Sheng, now completely engulfed in flames. The monster freezes in shock, staring at him floating above, but it reacts fast, using its tentacles to morph into sharp blades with energy condensing at their tips before blasting forward in a violent surge. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng isn't panicking. He's actually thinking. He reflects that from the moment a star is born, it goes through its protostar phase, then the main sequence stage, and eventually, it reaches its absolute true peak. At that moment, its volume, brightness, and temperature surge up to 10,000 times their normal levels. And right now, that's exactly the state he's entering. He pulls his arms inward, lowers his stance, and dashes forward. This is his red giant state. He meets the attack head-on. The collision is catastrophic. Space fractures around them. Lightning erupts wildly from the cracks, and the temperature skyrockets in seconds. The battlefield feels like it's being dragged into a miniature stellar explosion. We can see the giant eyeball visibly flinch. Seeing that tiny shift in expression, Lu Sheng smiles. He asks what that look is supposed to mean. Did it only just now learn what fear feels like? Then he throws another punch. When the smoke finally clears, the monster's entire body looks charred black, like it's been dragged through a grill. It continues muttering its unpleasant gibberish, but Lu Sheng doesn't bother listening. Instead, He quietly notes just how absurdly powerful this form truly is. He exhales slowly, and the flames begin to fade. He returns to normal. However, there's a catch. He can't actually maintain the red giant state for too long. It puts extreme strain on his body, and even more on his spirit. If he keeps pushing it, there's a real chance the power itself will backfire. As our boy began to contemplate all this, the smoke cleared, and the monster's body suddenly exploded from within. However, instead of collapsing for good, something slowly steps out from the wreckage. It looked like a human from the outside, and he's talking. He coldly tells Lu Sheng to look at what he's done, clearly irritated that his physical body was destroyed. Now that's a surprise. Lu Sheng ignores the guy, then calmly notes that his red giant state never truly touched the level of the rules. At best, it allowed him to fight evenly against a 13th level without falling behind. But then, if he wants to actually kill this thing, he's still just a little short. In other words, he needs real 13th level power. Conveniently enough, he has exactly that. Back in the dream realm, he defeated that level 13 zombie and absorbed its thunder rule. And he plans to use exactly that. The guy instinctively takes a few steps back, and he could almost feel it immediately, saying this is different. Lu Sheng doesn't give him time to process. He vanishes and appears right in front of him, throwing a punch while declaring that he will shatter darkness with thunder. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Skeletal Blade had a weird feeling. He pauses mid-flight and glances to the side. Without hesitation, he reaches straight into the void and grabs something from within. Out of the vortex, he pulls out a disgusting giant eyeball with writhing tentacles. He immediately realizes he's been trapped inside an illusion this whole time. If not for someone just now tearing open the illusion using the power of the rules, he might still be flying in circles. So he starts thinking, considering there are only a handful of 13th levels in the base, and among them he doesn't recall anyone had comprehended the thunder rule. So who got there before him? Back on Lu Sheng's side, punch after punch crashes down like falling thunder. The guy is forced backward repeatedly, completely suppressed, while everyone else was confused about what was going on. That's when the fat officer explains. He remarks that this is the power of rules, and not just any rules, but an extremely powerful one. In simpler terms, it's one level above laws, the true 13th level strength. What he doesn't understand is how something this terrifying can exist inside someone who's technically only 11th level. Saya gulps nervously. He suddenly realizes he's been calling the same person bro all this time, the same person who's beating a level 13 commander beast into the ground so effortlessly. Tungsten, on the other hand, is practically jumping in excitement, clapping and cheering like this is the greatest show he's ever seen. However, they quickly realize the lightning is spreading straight toward them, and they don't have time to get away. Then a barrier suddenly forms around them. Skeletal Blade finally arrives. He looks around and asks if they were the ones who sent out the distress signal. The two officers finally see him and almost collapse from relief. But Skeletal Blade first reassures them briefly before asking the real question. Which 13th level is currently fighting that beast? The two officers glance at each other. For a moment, neither knows how to answer. Skeletal Blade assumes it might be someone they don't recognize. A faint worry crosses his mind, thinking what if it's not one of theirs? The fat officer quickly explains it's a human after all. When Skeletal Blade finds out the guy's name is Lu Sheng, also a brand new recruit from their squad, he can hardly believe what he's hearing. The guy is completely bamboozled when he hears our boy is supposedly just a new recruit. The fat officer calmly explains he didn't mishear anything, then further notes that Lu Sheng only temporarily boarded the conscription ship from the Yamu sector. Well, technically that does make him new. After all, this really is his first time stepping onto the outer space battlefield. For a second, Skeletal Blade doesn't even know how to react. He slowly turns around and watches our boy absolutely beating the crap out of the commander beast, punch after punch raining down like a meteor shower. He quietly mutters to himself, finally registering what is actually happening. Meanwhile, the poor bastard is fighting for his life, throwing up every defense he can think of. But it doesn't matter. Our boy suddenly grabs him by the hair and basically tells him how embarrassingly weak he is without that octopus body to hide behind. The fight is already getting boring, so he decides it's time to wrap this up. Sensing death knocking, the dude tries to pry Lu Sheng's arm away, but again, it doesn't work. Our boy has him locked in place, while his other hand calmly charges up a devastating strike. The next second, the beast lets out a panicked cry. What followed was a devastating explosion, with energy detonating downward. The shockwave blasts everyone away. Most of the group is sent flying, barely able to keep their footing. Only Skeletal Blade manages to stay upright. Even then, he subconsciously clenches his fists, eyes wide as if he just witnessed something impossible, and remarks internally how terrifying that power is. Smoke and debris engulfed the area. A few seconds later, Lu Sheng walks out of the haze. In his hand was the commander's lifeless head. He casually notes it wasn't much to begin with, but just as he prepares to condense the remains into a crystal, something feels off. A wave of dizziness hits him. Then suddenly he feels sleepy. Then energy begins gathering around him. It forms a glowing circle beneath his feet, and that's when he closes his eyes. Light wraps around his body layer by layer, sealing him inside like a cocoon. Skeletal Blade steps closer to the cocoon and reaches out, trying to touch it. The moment his fingers brush against the surface, he immediately recognizes how dense and heavy it feels. He reflects that with energy this thick, could this be a breakthrough happening right on the battlefield? Either way, there's no time to stand around guessing. He decides they need to move, so he lifts the cocoon with one hand, then turns around and tells the rest to follow him. Meanwhile, no one says a word on the way back. The past few days replay in everyone's mind like a fever dream. Everything feels bizarre, unreal, almost absurd yet unforgettable. If it weren't for the fallen teammates and the injuries everyone carries, they'd almost convince themselves that none of it actually happened. Even the female officer unconsciously touches the spot where her arm used to be, quietly processing it all. The journey continues until suddenly, Skeletal Blade announces they've arrived. Everyone slowly descends, and he introduces the place, the main base of the other space battlefield. In front of them stands a massive structure, with awful drawn-looking aircraft zooming around it. But aside from that awful drawing, Saya and the others couldn't care less. They're just relieved to actually make it here, and more importantly, they actually survived. Suddenly, a man rushes over and salutes Skeletal Blade, welcoming him back from the mission. He casually counts the remaining members and even smiles, noting that quite a lot survived this time. But Skeletal Blade has bigger concerns. He tells the man to assign people to guard the cocoon, then immediately flies off toward the inner base alone. Upon arriving inside, guards respectfully greet him as "Sir," and he nods in response. He moves quickly until he reaches a wall decorated with a massive lion head emblem. He lands, and a girl walks over, clearly surprised he returned so soon. She had expected at least a few more days, and half-jokingly asked if the recruits were already cooked before he even arrived, and that's why he returned so early. Ignoring her dark humor, he asks where she learned that kind of slang, and that's when we learn her name is Martha. She chews on a lollipop and grins, saying it's trendy. But Skeletal Blade isn't in the mood. He says he needs to see the Supreme Star Commander immediately, explaining that the recruits were brought back safely, though with some unexpected developments. He asks if the commander is busy. Martha shrugs and replies that the commander is inside. As for being busy or not, she has no idea. She casually asks if he wants her to announce him. Seeing her completely unbothered attitude almost drives him insane, and he urgently tells her to hurry up. Right then, his communicator rings. It's the guard from earlier, and there's a video feed attached. On screen is Lu Sheng's cocoon. Skeletal Blade is stunned to see that it's still growing in size, reflecting that he's never even heard of something like this. Just then, Martha returns and tells him the commander is waiting. The doors open, and he strides in. The massive hallway echoes with the sharp tapping of his footsteps. At the end stands another enormous door. He enters and immediately salutes, showing respect to Lord Makoto. And that's when we learn that among the 100 major star sectors, there are 2 Supreme Star Commanders. One oversees all the sectors under their command. The other is stationed permanently at the outer space battlefield. And Makoto is the latter. Both are 14th level and have comprehended domains. And standing before him now is that towering figure, a massive-looking guy with 8 arms resembling that of a Sura. Turns out Skeletal Blade's real name is Halo. Makoto looks down at him and notes that he heard Halo has something important to report. According to what he knows, Halo just left for a mission not long ago. Halo salutes again and says, "That's exactly why he's here." Seeing how serious he looks, Makoto grows a little curious. The next second, a tiny projection figure appears in Halo's palm. He explains that the ones who attacked the recruit squad were likely one of the Oblivion Lord's lackeys. He admits he was hit by a curse during the encounter, which caused some complications. Makoto immediately catches the key point and asks if he slipped up. Halo quickly shakes his head and clarifies it's actually the opposite. Not only did most of the recruits return alive, but the survival rate far exceeded their expectations. Now Makoto is genuinely puzzled. Under interference like that, it would be very difficult to achieve such a result. That's when Halo drops the bomb. He reveals that among the recruits, there was a 13th level recruit who had already comprehended the Thunder Rule. He further explained that the person eliminated the enemy, and by the time he arrived, the battle was already over. Makoto was not expecting any of this. He mutters to himself, 13th level and wielding the Thunder Rule? He asks if that's truly the case. Halo reconfirms it. He says he personally felt that lightning, pure destruction and annihilation packed into one force. He even admits that he himself wouldn't dare clash head-on against it. Hearing this, Makoto lights up. If this is true, it's massive news for the 100 major star sectors. They haven't seen a genius who comprehended such a powerful rule in a very long time. He immediately says he wants to meet this person. When he learns that Lu Sheng was left outside the base's protective barrier, Makoto almost criticizes Halo, but after thinking it through, he acknowledges he was just following protocol. He notes they can simply complete verification and bring him in. Leaving someone of that caliber outside alone would be disrespectful. At this point, Halo clearly struggles to explain the full situation. He finally says it's complicated and asks Makoto to come see for himself. In the next scene, the two rush out of the base. By the time they arrive, the cocoon has grown significantly larger. The two officers guarding it immediately sense Makoto's aura and quickly salute. Makoto ignores them completely and focuses solely on the cocoon. He reaches out and touches it with his finger. His expression changes instantly. He confirms this is indeed the Thunder Rule. Even more surprising, it's comprehended by a human. He turns and pats Halo on the back, praising him for a job well done and saying he's made a great contribution by bringing back such a powerful talent. Unfortunately, Makoto clearly underestimates his own strength. Halo coughs up a mouthful of blood and hurriedly wipes it away. Makoto realizes he got too excited and apologizes, admitting he hasn't been this thrilled in a long time. He then observes that after killing the Oblivion Lord's lackey, Lu Sheng must have gained substantial benefits. He seems to have reached a critical threshold and is currently in the middle of a breakthrough. The talent, the strength, everything about him screams rising star. Makoto immediately decides he must build a good relationship. Over the next few years, once Lu Sheng fully integrates here, he will then report this achievement back to the main star system. That political merit practically delivers itself. After calming down, Makoto asks Halo if he knows this young man's background. Halo rubs his chin, struggling to organize his thoughts. He points forward and suggests he ask them instead. He was pointing towards the two officers. After months of buildup, we finally learn their names, Ziki and Una, who turn out to be third-level star officers. Makoto compliments their efforts, and that alone nearly brings tears to their eyes. In their hearts, receiving praise from the Supreme Star Commander himself is an honor they never even dreamed of. Makoto tells them it's time to spill everything. Zeki starts from the beginning, explaining that Lu Sheng came from Yamu, missed his original conscription ship, and boarded theirs from a neighboring star sector. Makoto listens carefully, then suddenly cuts in. So what Zeki is implying is that Lu Sheng is actually a new recruit? That's the exact same reaction Halo had earlier. Both of them still find it unbelievable. Makoto turns to look at the cocoon again and reflects. A 13th level new recruit is also his first time entering the outer space battlefield, which means he achieved all this back in their universe. While extremely rare, it's not completely unheard of. More importantly, it confirms Lu Sheng belongs to their 100 major star sector. Still, Makoto can't even remember the last time someone like this existed. And now, out of nowhere, a monster like this appears. He even briefly wonders if that guy Soya secretly prepared this as some kind of surprise for him. Either way, Ziki hands over the remaining information. Makoto only takes one glance at the file and immediately frowns, saying, "This can't be right." He asks what era this record is from, pointing out that it lists Lu Sheng as only 11th level. He even remarks that this kind of outdated record must be at least a few thousand years old. Una quickly explains that this is all the information Yamu had sent to them, adding that this is the full file they received. What she doesn't say, though, is that the data isn't wrong at all. When she first met Lu Sheng, he really was 11th level, And yet, that seemingly ordinary new recruit somehow casually eliminated a level 13 commander beast. She doesn't even dare voice that thought because it sounds too absurd, even in her own head. Makoto still believes something isn't adding up, so he decides to verify it himself. With a simple wave of his hand, countless projections bloom into existence around him. Data streams flicker rapidly as he personally searches for Lu Sheng's records, and then a purple flame suddenly ignites in his eyes. His aura surges out uncontrollably, spreading across the area like a tidal wave. Everyone nearby feels it instantly. Halo immediately realizes this is bad. He rushes forward, steps in front of the two officers, and calls out to Makoto, snapping him back to reality. Makoto finally comes to his senses and withdraws his aura. He claims it was just an unintentional leak of power, but because the big guy is 14th level, even that tiny fraction was enough to make everyone present feel like death itself was inches away. Makoto apologizes, admitting he was momentarily shocked and didn't mean to frighten them. Halo silently reflects that someone like their Supreme Star Commander should possess near-flawless mental and emotional control, and there's no way a simple record would cause that level of disturbance. Not to mention he even lost control of his own aura. So what exactly did he see in Lu Sheng's records? Almost as if reading his thoughts, Makoto hands the record over and tells him to see for himself. Halo takes it. At first glance, it looks identical to the earlier version Zeki presented. Nothing special. But when he looks closer, he notices the additional details and his eyes go wide. He learned our guy is only 20 years old, indeed 11th level, and the most bizarre part is that every single achievement listed all happened this year. The record itself almost sounds like a fairy tale. Halo turns to look at our boy, and for a moment his brain refuses to process what he's seeing. The whole thing feels impossible. And honestly, it's probably the same thought that crossed Makoto's mind earlier. Halo's body trembles as he subconsciously repeats that our boy is only 21 years old, and that he's already at level 11. The shock hits him so hard he can barely form a sentence. He reflects that when he finally reached the 11th level, he was already over 200 years old. And across the entire 100 major star sectors, anyone reaching that level before the age of 500 is already considered an absolute prodigy. If he had to describe just how insane this situation really is, Halo notes that someone achieving it before the age of 100 would be like trying to find a single grain of sand in the endless universe. And yet here stands Lu Sheng. Halo begins comparing him to the current genius everyone recognizes here inside the outer space battlefield, the famous heir of the Turing family, Orn Turing, who also possesses an immortal-level physique. He further explained that by being the young master of the Turing family, both his background and status were also among the very best in the star sectors. Even so, it took the guy 40-something years to reach 11th level. Makoto agrees and adds that someone like Orn is widely believed to have the greatest chance in history to break through 15th level and become a ruler of an entire system. But compared to the young man standing in front of them now, the difference is night and day. Both may possess immortal-level physiques, yet Lu Sheng clearly stands on another level entirely. Halo nods in full agreement. For a moment, the two fall into silence. Makoto eventually remarks that those fancy titles sitting on top of Orn Turing's head will probably change owners very soon, and the person to do so might be standing right here in front of them. Still, Halo can't wrap his head around one thing. He asks himself how someone could possibly jump from the 11th level to 13th level in just 2 months. To him, that sounds completely impossible. Makoto, however, notes that it might not be impossible after all, and tells Halo not to forget about that thing. He trails off before finishing the sentence, but Halo already knows exactly what he means. Immediately after, energy suddenly begins condensing into the cocoon. The entire thing starts shaking violently. The surrounding recruits, who had been watching from the sidelines, are forced to keep retreating as waves of energy burst outward. Halo has completely lost count of how many streams of Rule galaxies have appeared. Makoto stares without blinking. He realized Halo might be right. Lu Sheng is actually just 11th level and not actually 13, but somehow managed to comprehend the Thunder Rule. Looking at Lu Sheng almost like someone staring at a priceless treasure, Makoto finally announces that they may truly be witnessing the rise of a genius far beyond the Turing family's prodigy, a once-in-history monster destined to shake the entire starry universe. Halo gulps nervously because he just realizes something terrifying. So many rule galaxies entering the body can only mean Lu Sheng is breaking through into the 12th level. Makoto admits that when he first heard Halo's report earlier, he was still skeptical. But now, watching everything unfold with his own eyes, he can basically confirm he was right all along, and our guy using the Thunder Rule to kill a commander-level beast wasn't hard to believe after all. Even after seeing everything with his own eyes, Halo still finds it impossible to believe. He notes that the whole thing feels completely unreal, yet somehow the truth is happening right in front of them. Meanwhile, the scene shifts inside the cocoon. Our boy is curled up naked in mid-air like a ball, and things are clearly not going well. Veins bulge across his entire body as waves of pain tear through him. Lu Sheng admits to himself that he might have pushed things a little too far. Earlier, when he used the red giant form, that was already the absolute limit his martial body could handle. Now his entire body feels like it's about to split apart. The moment he unleashed the Thunder Rule, the fragile balance inside him shattered instantly, causing his body to collapse on the spot. The only reason he didn't completely explode right then and there is that the 330,000 immortal cells inside him formed the last defensive line, barely holding his body together and buying him just enough time to rebuild his martial body. But that's not the only thing keeping him alive. By combining both martial arts and cultivation methods, the immortal Tao patterns inside his body begin activating as well, further strengthening his martial body. Even so, he notes that he hasn't fully recovered yet. Right now, he can only maintain this strange state between a half-energy body and a half-physical body. It's pretty obvious that the power of the Thunder Rule is simply too massive. With nowhere to release it, the energy constantly destroys his martial body, only for it to regenerate again moments later. Over and over, destruction and rebirth repeat like a brutal cycle. And now Lu Sheng begins thinking about the real problem. How is he supposed to combine all these powers into one? The most obvious answer appears almost immediately. That is to break through. If his body has already reached its limit, then the only way forward is to break through to the next level and force all three powers to stabilize within his body. So he starts with the cultivation path. As soon as his golden core merges deeper with the immortal cells, something incredible begins happening. The cells start multiplying at an insane rate, hundreds and thousands of times faster every second. The number quickly jumps to 500,000, and before long, it reaches 1 million. Then suddenly, a wave of realization crashes over him. For a brief moment, Lu Sheng gains an unbelievably clear understanding of how the rules of the universe operate and evolve. Everything feels smooth and natural, as if the breakthrough was always meant to happen. He realizes this must be what 12th level feels like, but he's far from done. Next, our guy prepares to guide the galaxy rules into his body. Every high-level martial art he obtained from the Dream Realm is about to be integrated using the power of galaxy rules. In total, that amounts to 38. And finally, with the immortal stellar technique surging through him, now strengthened by 5 million immortal cells, Lu Sheng begins to wonder just how far his martial body can evolve when combined with all his body-refining techniques. He starts imagining the possibilities. Could his body finally withstand the complete red giant form? Could he crush a level 13 enemy with just one hand, even without using the Thunder Rule? The thought alone makes him excited. With determination burning in his eyes, Lu Sheng pushes forward without hesitation. Meanwhile, outside the cocoon, the scene becomes absolutely breathtaking. Dozens of rule galaxies swirl through the sky, forming a massive vortex that surrounds the entire area. The spectacle is so overwhelming that anyone who sees it knows they'll never forget it for the rest of their lives. People from far away begin noticing the disturbance and rush over one after another. Someone in the crowd suddenly cries out, wondering what exactly they're looking at, and who on earth could possibly comprehend this many rules. Soon, the crowd starts counting. 38. One dude stares in disbelief and remarks that such a thing has never existed before. Even the legendary genius Orn Turing only mastered fewer than 20 rule galaxies. Meanwhile, more and more people arrive, all eager to see which terrifying prodigy is causing such a phenomenon. Back with Makoto for the 100th time, he admits that if he hadn't seen this with his own eyes, he would never have believed it. In fact, he probably wouldn't have even dared to imagine that their universe could produce someone with talent this outrageous. Halo remarks that Lu Sheng's starting point is already the finish line that most so-called geniuses spend their entire lives chasing. Everything about this situation feels unbelievable. Una then reflects that if Lu Sheng already controls 38 rule galaxies at 12th level, she then begins to wonder just how terrifying he'll become once he reaches 13th level. Meanwhile, Ziki points out she's forgetting that Lu Sheng has already comprehended a 13th level thunder rule. So if he truly reaches 13th level one day, he won't just possess a single rule. That statement instantly grabs Makoto's attention. He snaps his head toward Ziki, as everyone begins realizing the same terrifying conclusion. He says that Ziki is absolutely right. When Lu Sheng reaches that level in the future, he will almost certainly control multiple rules at once. At that moment, Makoto realizes he has still underestimated this young man. He quietly mutters to himself, wondering if Lu Sheng can even still be considered human anymore. Meanwhile, back inside the cocoon, Lu Sheng's body slowly begins stabilizing. Inside his mental space, all of his powers are compressing together, forming something that looks almost like a black hole. The energy continues collapsing inward, growing denser and denser. One thing worries him slightly. The inheritances left behind by his teacher and senior brothers are now completely buried beneath this new power. Lu Sheng can't tell yet whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. However, he knew one thing for sure. The ultimate limit of his teacher's inheritance only leads to 16th level. And according to his own judgment, that level is nowhere near enough to save this universe. Perhaps the only real path forward is to abandon the smooth road his teacher prepared for him and instead forge an entirely new martial path of his own. Either way, the timing feels right. After absorbing the memories of 5 entire planets from the Dream Realm, Lu Sheng has pushed all of his martial techniques to the peak of the 5th realm, while his psychic power has reached the peak of the 12th level. Now it's finally time to take the next step. He reaches forward and pulls out a grotesque, eerie eyeball. The object cracks open and splits apart as waves of energy burst outward. Suddenly, countless whispers echo inside his mind, urging him to forget everything and surrender to destruction. For a brief moment, Lu Sheng actually feels himself being influenced. Then he realizes what's happening. Before dying, the commander-level beast planted a curse inside him. Now, the energy within that eye has activated the curse, likely meant to mark him so that some terrifying and much more powerful beast can hunt him down later. Lu Sheng casually slaps the dark energy apart, completely crushing the curse. Honestly, he doesn't care in the slightest. Back on Earth, he already provoked a level 15 beast, so this so-called Oblivion Lord or whatever doesn't really scare him. At this point, Lu Sheng basically lives by one rule. The more enemies he has, the less he worries about any single one. Anyway, once the remains of the commander beast are completely shattered, a massive surge of psychic energy pours into our guy's body. Fragmented memories and chaotic images flood his mind, all filled with dark and twisted energy. But he barely reacts. The energy reminds him of the first time he created his mutated cell, and that thought suddenly triggers another idea. Why not check on the little guy he left behind on Earth? In the next instant, his consciousness travels across space and arrives in the deep sea. He scans the surroundings and quickly finds the little guy, but its appearance has completely changed. The clone now sits at the center of an ugly-looking sea creature, almost as if it's being carefully protected while being nurtured with constant energy. What surprises Lu Sheng the most is its strength. The clone has already reached the 12th level, progressing even faster than our boy himself. Clearly, the little guy has been living a pretty comfortable life. Lu Sheng also senses that the mark he left inside the clone has been developed quite well. The creature has even started exploring a path related to the stellar path. However, something about it looks strange. The stars inside the clone glow a dark purple color, filled with chaos and evil energy. Lu Sheng wonders if this might be what the sons of the dark side universe actually look like. Then again, it's not that surprising. After all, a level 15 beast has been personally nurturing the clone this whole time. Since that's the case, Lu Sheng decides to give the little guy a bit more nourishment. He absorbs most of the commander beast's energy for himself, but the portions that have too much dark energy are all tossed directly to the clone. The little guy's body rapidly swells as its aura surges upward, almost reaching 13th level. Sensing the change, the beast quickly made his way here. The monster seems quite pleased and quietly remarks that the little guy should grow stronger quickly so it can eventually tear that person apart. Of course, the person it wants to kill is none other than our boy himself. By this point, our guy had already left. After quietly withdrawing his consciousness, he reflects that the next time they meet will probably be the day he comes to harvest the results. And honestly, He's already looking forward to seeing just how furious that beast will be when it realizes the truth. After messing around for a bit, our boy finally returns to his own body, immediately getting to work refining the energy he just absorbed. He pushes his control to the limit, stripping away all the impurities and leaving behind only the purest nourishment. While the refinement continues, Lu Sheng takes the chance to review everything he's learned so far, every martial technique, every memory he gained from the dream realm. One by one, those insights begin pouring back into his body. At first, things seem smooth, but suddenly something goes wrong. His eyes snap open, and the next second he spits out a mouthful of golden blood. Turns out the commander-level beast had spent ages devouring countless creatures in the dark side universe. All that accumulated negative energy now crashes into our boy's mental space, almost as if the power itself is trying to consume him from within. But strangely enough, our guy doesn't panic. Instead, he actually looks excited. He notes that the sheer scale of this energy is unbelievable. The pressure is so intense that it almost shatters the divine crystals. And yet, somehow this gives him a deeper understanding of the divine crystal path. The next moment, that raging energy gathers in his hand and instantly condenses into a rainbow-colored sword. For a second, you might think our guy is getting on that spectrum, but he's dead-ass serious. He calmly remarks that each color represents the power of a different emotion. So far, Lu Sheng can control 7 emotions: anger, fear, shock, joy, contemplation, sorrow, and worry. Each one forms part of the sword itself. Individually, a single emotional rule isn't that powerful, but once 2 or more emotions rule in combination, the result becomes something entirely different. Furthermore, Lu Sheng notes this is only the beginning. What he's showing right now is just a partial manifestation. If one day he manages to gather every emotion, the transformation might reach a completely unimaginable level. Satisfied with the result, he casually remarks that he just added another trump card to his arsenal. With everything prepared, Lu Sheng announces that it's finally time to step into the 12th level. Taking a deep breath, our boy fully locks in and begins the real breakthrough. Meanwhile, back in the cocoon, the surrounding space suddenly starts to tremble, and countless rule galaxies gather around it. The concentration of power becomes so dense that it actually begins to liquefy. Everyone watching is stunned as the energy around the area starts getting violently pulled straight into the cocoon. At that moment, Makoto immediately realizes what's happening. He notes that Lu Sheng has truly begun his breakthrough. The thought alone leaves him amazed, wondering what kind of monstrous genius this kid really is. Meanwhile, Halo instinctively grabs his chest, trying to suppress the uncontrollable pounding in his heart. He remarks to himself that the feeling is strange, almost as if he were about to witness some terrifying existence born to life. And just then, someone makes a grand entrance. People quickly turn their heads, curious about who just arrived. Turns out, it's Orn Turing. The crowd can't help but feel surprised. Even the legendary Orn Turing has been drawn here by this unbelievable phenomenon. Orn arrives and doesn't say a word. His eyes stay locked on the glowing cocoon in the distance, completely silent as he studies the terrifying energy swirling around it. At first glance, he instinctively assumes someone inside the base is about to break through to 13th level. That thought leaves him slightly disappointed. After all, he had just come out of seclusion, expecting to shock everyone with his own progress, only to realize someone else might have beaten him to it. He quietly wonders who this person could be. What shocks him even more is the number of rule galaxies surrounding the cocoon. Orn counts them and notes there are 43, literally twice as many as his own. But then something feels off. He narrows his eyes and observes more carefully. After a moment, he realizes this doesn't look like a 13th level breakthrough at all. In fact, it's only 12th level. That realization leaves him even more stunned. Before he can think further, the sky suddenly darkens. A chaotic, evil aura begins spreading from the void above, creeping across the battlefield like a storm rolling in. Meanwhile, Makoto doesn't look surprised at all. He calmly scans the crowd and casually asks if everyone is ready for work. Most of the fighters have already drawn their weapons, clearly aware of what's coming next. Turns out, whenever a prodigy emerges, the beasts will always try to assassinate them during a breakthrough. This happened with Orn back in the day, and considering Lu Sheng's talent is clearly several times greater than his, this was pretty much expected. Makoto then announces that this will be a guardian battle, and everyone must prepare to face the enemy. Almost at the same time, the base alarms begin blaring. The gates open,
and more warriors rush out from inside. Those who were outside the base also started sprinting back at full speed. Within moments, everyone gathers in front of Lu Sheng and forms a solid wall of defense, protecting the cocoon behind them. Just then, a girl's voice echoes from nearby. She clicks her tongue in amusement, remarking that this lineup is looking crazy. She casually notes that when Orn broke through back then, the beasts only sent 2 commander level to deal with him. She then asks Halo to guess who they might be sending this time. Halo chuckles and calmly remarks that no matter how many enemies show up, with all 3 of them being the peak of the 13th level, plus the entire base, and of course, their Supreme Star Commanders overseeing everything, but just as he was about to say the enemy won't be able to cause any real trouble, but before he can finish his sentence, a suffocating pressure suddenly crashes down from the sky. The 3 of them instantly shift into combat stance, and the relaxed expressions on their faces vanish, because what they just felt was the pressure of a level 14 being, also known as a general-level beast. Thunder flashes across the void as lightning crackles violently in the sky. A massive vortex quickly forms, twisting the air like a gateway to another world. At that moment, Makoto simply raises his hand and gives a casual wave. Instantly, the crushing pressure on everyone disappears. Halo immediately turns toward Makoto, trying to confirm the source of that terrifying aura. Makoto gives a small nod in response, then slowly looks up at the sky. Under his breath, he quietly remarks that he didn't expect that person to show up, and then he finally reveals the name Zechariah. Right as the tension peaks, a massive gate suddenly tears open in the sky, and a devastating blast comes crashing down. Makoto reacts instantly, rushing forward without hesitation and taking the attack head-on, but he clearly has no intention of fighting here and endangering everyone below. With a swift move, he drags his opponent away, and the 2 of them vanish through space, teleporting far from the battlefield. Before long, several figures emerge, and to everyone's surprise, 4 demon generals appear at once. While Halo was slightly caught off guard, his buddies had already picked their targets. As for the extra demon general, that one will have to be handled by the base defenses and everyone else. The next second, the 2 of them launch forward. Halo immediately pulls out his weapon and charges after them. Meanwhile, the rest of the warriors look at the big shots already leading the charge and quickly realize there's no reason to hold back. Their fighting spirit ignites, and they rush into battle as well. Immediately, the battlefield erupts into chaos as more and more beasts emerge from the gate, and the 2 sides clash. And then there's Orn. Instead of choosing someone at his level, he boldly steps forward alone to challenge the last demon general. With 20 rule galaxies, Orn is practically invincible within the 12th level. Well, at least he was. Because before Lu Sheng showed up, this dude had always been the undisputed prodigy of the 100 major star sector. Even Lord Makoto himself had openly praised his talent. But everything changed the moment that mysterious cocoon appeared. Orn still can't understand it. He doesn't know where Lu Sheng came from, and he certainly can't accept why he might be inferior to him. That frustration quickly turns into raw determination. With a roar, Orn unleashes his ultimate technique. Massive pillars of energy erupt forward, blasting straight into the demon general and blowing away half of its body, even cracking the horn on its head. The sight shocks quite a few people nearby. Meanwhile, Halo is locked in a tough fight of his own. As he battles, he notes that these demon generals are no pushovers. Every now and then, he glances toward the cocoon, quietly reflecting that if this had happened before meeting Lu Sheng, he probably would have been amazed by Orn's performance. But now, honestly, it just feels average. Unfortunately for Orn, that devastating strike still doesn't hit a fatal point. The demon general reveals a creepy grin, and within just a few seconds, its body fully regenerates. Orn curses under his breath, saying how his full-power attack didn't even leave a scratch mark. To be fair, what Orn managed to do is already impressive, but to Orn, that only makes things worse. Especially when the demon general looks like it's barely been scratched, almost like someone just tickled it. His breathing becomes heavier. He reminds himself that he carries an immortal bloodline, the greatest pride of the Turing family, a genius who might one day reach 15th level and become a ruler of an entire star system. Simply surviving against a level 13 beast is nowhere near enough for someone like him. The dude clenches his fist, and suddenly flames ignite around his body. With a furious roar, his aura begins to swell as he burns his own immortal bloodline. His attacks grow sharper and more violent, but deep down, he knows the truth. There's still a massive gap between him and the demon general. No matter how hard he tries, he simply can't kill the damn thing. Just as his frustration reaches its peak, a strange voice suddenly echoes inside his mind. For a brief moment, it feels like time itself freezes. The voice quietly asks if he wants greater power. Orn abruptly stops fighting and looks around, demanding to know who's speaking. The voice calmly tells him to look up, and when he does, a pair of enormous eyes appears in the sky above, staring straight through him as if reading into his soul. The voice remarks in a tempting tone that gaining power would actually be very simple. It asks Orn if 43 rule galaxies really sound that impressive, because if he wished, it could let him comprehend hundreds, even thousands instantly. The voice further adds that Orn could choose any path he wants, whether that's 13th level power, powerful rules. It could even elevate his bloodline to a monarch level. For a moment, Orn doesn't say a word. He simply stares at those eyes in silence. The voice continues, calmly noting that if he agrees, he could become the greatest genius in the entire heavenly serpent system. And the price? Just one small favor. As the voice finishes speaking, a slender hand slowly emerges from the void and gently lifts Orn's chin. When Orn looks up, the name Oblivion Lord flashes across his mind. A cold sweat immediately runs down his forehead, and for a brief second he actually thinks this might be his golden chance. But then, almost like waking himself up, he snaps out of it and slaps himself hard, so hard that blood starts to seep from the corner of his mouth. He steadies himself, grits his teeth, and practically demands to know who the hell would think he's the kind of weak-minded fool that can be easily manipulated. Without hesitation, he lashes out, hurling a full-force blast straight at the illusion, calling the Oblivion Lord nothing more than a filthy parasite from the dark side universe. The attack tears a massive hole through the illusion, and just like that, Orn drags himself back into reality and continues throwing hands. But meanwhile, that voice, it never leaves. It continued whispering, almost mockingly, noting how unfortunate it was to say because all Orn had to do was subtly guide his lovely subordinate toward that cocoon. Such a simple task, it remarks, something that could have been done if Orn just accidentally let it slip by. And unfortunately, that fraction of a second of hesitation actually happens. Orn slips for just a second, and his opponent immediately capitalizes on it, landing a brutal hit right into his opening. Furthermore, the voice keeps pressing him, telling him the reward would be limitless. It points out how ironic it is, saying Lu Sheng could very well take everything from him, all his glory, everything he's built, and yet here he is, risking his life to protect him. Orn gets knocked back, and the voice coldly remarks that he simply doesn't understand. Orn's fists tighten, and his body begins to tremble. But when he turns around, that's when he realizes he's already dangerously close to the cocoon. He notes the situation quickly. Far away, Makoto is already locked in battle with the Oblivion Lord while everyone else is fully occupied. No one is paying attention to him right now. No one would notice if the fight just drifted a little closer. Just a little. He begins to justify it in his mind, telling himself it wouldn't even be intentional. Maybe he just failed to block a level 13 demon general in time. That would be understandable, right? The dude's thoughts spiral, and he keeps rationalizing, reminding himself that one thing the voice said isn't wrong, and Lu Sheng could take everything from him. So why should he protect him? A twisted grin slowly forms on his face, and a flicker of killing intent flashes through his eyes. But then, he suddenly snaps back. But it was already too late. He gets blasted backward again, and now he's only a few steps away from the cocoon. He's still struggling internally, still fighting those thoughts, but it's already slipping out of his control. At that exact moment, a terrifying surge of energy erupts from the demon general in front of him. The guy bursts into manic laughter as his muscles begin to swell violently. In the next second, he fully unleashes his power. And that's when Orn finally realizes he's been played. This demon general is actually the strongest among the four. Everything before this was just an act, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Orn immediately understands the gravity of his mistake. He curses himself, realizing he's unknowingly become a crucial piece in the enemy's plan. Regret floods in, and he desperately tries to fix everything, throwing himself forward in a final attempt to stop it. But the demon general simply raises a single finger, casually mocking him as if swatting away an insect. In the next instant, Orn's body is completely pierced through. A massive hole opens in his chest. As his life fades, he reflects on everything he's done, and quietly acknowledges that he's become a sinner of the universe. And just like that, his body drops heavily from the sky. Halo senses that sudden surge of energy and instantly realizes what's really going on. He notes this whole thing was a classic diversion, and Lu Sheng is in great danger. Without hesitation, Halo goes all in with a desperate strike, but meanwhile, his opponent doesn't even flinch. The guy straight up ignores the damage, determined to pin Halo down no matter what. And somewhere else, the Oblivion Lord quietly observes, clearly satisfied. At the same time, that demon general has already reached the cocoon. He steps forward, practically declaring Lu Sheng's death like it's already decided. But the moment his hand touches the cocoon, everything changes. In the next scene, the cocoon suddenly cracks open. A hand reaches out, then the rest of his body. Our boy smiles, almost like he's been waiting for this moment, and remarks that it's been a while since he last used this technique. Then, without any buildup, he flicks the dude on the forehead. But this isn't just any flick. It's infused with stellar power. The demon general freezes, completely unable to comprehend what's happening. In the next instant, an overwhelming force detonates through his body, shattering him instantly. He tries to resist, practically screaming that it's impossible, but it doesn't matter. One explosion later, he's gone. Not even ashes remain. Out of the smoke, our boy made his grand entrance. Everyone turns at the same time. Lu Sheng stands there, hands in his pockets, rocking a fresh new look, casually remarking how lively things are outside, and noting there's no way he could just sit this one out. Meanwhile, a wave of reinforcements arrives just in time to witness everything. And among them is Monroe. The moment Monroe sees him, his entire body trembles. He recognizes our boy instantly. Not just that, he just witnessed Lu Sheng casually delete a peak-level 13 demon general like it was nothing. Monroe can barely process it as he reflects on all the prodigies he's ever heard of. Even Orn, for example, the so-called top prodigy of the outer space battlefield. But in his mind, none of them could compare to Lu Sheng. He clenches his fists, unable to understand how someone could jump from the 10th level to 12th in such a short time and could somehow kill a being one level above him so effortlessly. It just makes no sense. Anyway, all that confusion eventually turns into a quiet sigh. He finally understands why the Supreme Star Commander personally mobilized this so-called Guardian battle. Because this isn't just talent anymore. This is something beyond explanation. And at this point, Lu Sheng has already become the light of humanity. Their hope. Back to our boy. Lu Sheng slowly raises his head. Up in the sky, countless eyes stare down at him, but he just smiles. Then without hesitation, he fuses two emotions into an energy blade and dashes forward. He casually asks what the guy's staring at, and then starts swinging. In an instant, countless slashes tear through the sky. Even the Oblivion Lord is caught off guard. The next second, cracks spread across the sky itself, and those massive eyes vanish. The once void is literally split open, revealing light beyond it, and the aftershock alone sends people flying. The Oblivion Lord curses, locking onto Lu Sheng, declaring he won't let this go. But our guy doesn't care. He reflects that ever since learning about the coming catastrophe years ago, there's always been a weight on his shoulders. He's been searching for a way to save everything, but those goals always felt distant, almost impossible. But now, he finally feels like he can reach it. Even if 12th is still far from 15th level, it's enough for him to start seeing the path. And in that moment, he ignites all 5 million immortal cells within his body. That power floods every inch of him. Before, it would have torn him apart, but now, he pushes it even further, activating his red giant form once again. Even from far away, everyone is forced back by the overwhelming heat. And somehow Orn is still alive, but barely. He clutches his chest, staring at Lu Sheng in disbelief. He notes this kind of pressure. This isn't something an immortal bloodline should produce. This feels like something deeper, something rooted in genetics itself. It reminds him of only one thing. A monarch-level bloodline. Halo realizes it too. Only that level of aura could match what they're seeing. Meanwhile, Halo, who was previously on the verge of despair, suddenly regains his momentum. He cuts through his opponent with a single strike, slicing half their body apart, and loudly declares that their 100 major star sector has given birth to a monarch-level bloodline, then tells the beasts to tremble. And they do. That pressure alone begins to instill fear across the battlefield. Lu Sheng, on the other hand, casually names this new form. The primary star form, Golden Crow. The next second, a massive Golden Crow phantom manifests behind him, growing clearer as it merges with his energy. After a sharp cry, within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers, every beast is engulfed in flames and reduced to ash. When the Golden Crow returns to our guy's body, only one enemy remains. He says this was perfect timing. He notes it's finally time to test his full strength. He looks toward the void, slowly clenches his fist, gathering every bit of his strength into that single strike, and throws it straight into the void. Picking up right where things left off, our boy unleashes a devastating strike straight at the Oblivion Lord, and sure enough, a furious scream echoes back, cursing Lu Sheng and swearing vengeance. Honestly, that's nothing new. People threatening him is practically routine at this point. Anyway, as the scene zooms in, a massive crack begins to spread across the sky, almost like reality itself is about to cave in. From within, the Oblivion Lord lashes out again, this time sounding even more savage and unhinged. And then, right through that fracture, Makoto makes his entrance. He looks to be in an unusually good mood, and without wasting a second, he announces that the Oblivion Lord has already retreated. He then steps beside our boy and tells everyone that they must remember the name Lu Sheng, adding that one day every single person here will feel genuinely proud of protecting that very name. At that, the crowd erupts. Cheers, chants, celebration, it all bursts out at once. Meanwhile, Makoto's voice carries far beyond the battlefield, amplified by his psychic energy, further boosting morale. Then, just as quickly, the scene shifts back to Makoto's office. Despite everything, Makoto calmly remarks that Lu Sheng shouldn't stay here any longer. That catches everyone off guard, and Lu Sheng said he just got here. Makoto nods, says he understands, then closes his eyes, choosing his words carefully, and then mentions that Lu Sheng doesn't belong here. He explains that the Oblivion Lord hasn't given up going after him. Furthermore, he warns that the enemy's schemes and attacks won't be like this time, and they'll slip in from every possible angle. Naturally, our guy pushes back, pointing out that he already managed to injure the Oblivion Lord. Makoto lets out a soft chuckle at that and asks, almost rhetorically, whether he really believes that's all a 14th-level being is capable of. He admits, sure, Lu Sheng did land a hit, but to someone like that, it's about as serious as a minor scrape. Then Makoto stands up, sharpening his tone a little. He stresses that, as someone at the same level, he knows exactly how much the Oblivion Lord held back, and they haven't revealed the true dark side power. And meanwhile, with so many lower-level folks around, Makoto himself couldn't go all out either, basically fighting with one hand tied behind his back. So he concludes, plainly and firmly, that next time they meet, he is certain that the Oblivion Lord will go all in to erase Lu Sheng no matter what. And more importantly, he reminds everyone that Lu Sheng is the most outstanding genius the 100-star sector has ever seen. His future isn't here. It's out there, across entire star systems, maybe even whole star domains, which means he shouldn't be stuck here over pride or impulse. After a brief silence, Makoto asks if he understands. A short while later, Lu Sheng nods, agreeing, then asks where he should go. Makoto answers immediately, the Heavenly Rank Academy, the top institution in the Heavenly Serpent system. He explains that there, Lu Sheng will meet countless exceptional people, friends, rivals, maybe both. Meanwhile, he adds that Orn will be going as well, and Makoto himself will personally escort them. Once they leave the outer space battlefield, the Oblivion Lord will have a much harder time targeting him. On top of that, the base's 3 top fighters will accompany them too. It's the first time Lu Sheng has even heard of this academy. He turns to Halo and asks how long the trip will take. Halo runs a quick calculation and tells him that with a warp jump, it's actually not too bad, about 7 to 8 cosmic months. Lu Sheng thinks it through, then casually snaps his fingers, fixing his hair and reverting to his usual look. When he asks when they're leaving, Makoto answers right now. Meanwhile, Halo can't help but reflect on everything. He notes he's never seen Makoto this patient before. The guy who usually speaks in as few words as possible is now carefully explaining things that are practically common knowledge. Honestly, Halo figures if anyone saw this, it would hit the headlines across the 100-star sector instantly. And just as he's lost in thought, Makoto turns and asks if there's anything else. Lu Sheng says he wants to meet a few friends before leaving. And just like that, Halo gets assigned to lead the way. Watching the two leave, the girl clearly wanted to say something. She hesitates, then asks whether Makoto was actually serious, because with Lu Sheng's talent, there's basically no way he'll ever come back. Makoto already knows that, of course. He calls her by name, Mina, and calmly tells her that chains were never meant to bind a star. And Lu Sheng? He remarks that he's destined for a much bigger stage. Mina nods, says she believes that too, but still, she can't help feeling a little regret. She admits it would have been nice to spend a bit more time with him. And as that thought settles in, her face goes puff. Well, seems like our boy still has his riz even up in space. Meanwhile, the burly guy beside her suddenly speaks up. He just wants to know if Lu Sheng actually managed to leave a scratch on the Oblivion Lord. Makoto shakes his head. That answer immediately puts the man at ease. He practically tells himself it makes sense. No way someone that outrageous could exist. In his view, no matter how monstrous Lu Sheng is, there's no way he can just ignore the two-level gap and ignore the law barrier, all the while injuring the Oblivion Lord. But clearly, he's misunderstood. Makoto then adds, almost casually, that his headshake wasn't a denial. If anything, he notes, it was because a scratch doesn't quite describe it. He explains that what Lu Sheng did wasn't just scrape the enemy. He straight up destroyed one of the Oblivion Lord's arms. And just like that, both of them freeze, completely stunned. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the battlefield, the aftermath is still a mess. The remains of beasts drift around, scattered everywhere, and naturally someone has to clean it all up. That job falls to people like Saya. He moves through the wreckage, quietly collecting severed limbs and broken bodies. Occasionally he comes across human corpses too. One man in front of him has been pierced clean through the chest by a spike. Without someone like Saya, the body would have just kept drifting in space endlessly. Saya pulls out a storage ring, carefully preserving what he can before storing the remains away. After all, these were comrades, people who died protecting Lu Sheng alongside him. He might act carefree most of the time, but Saya is actually a noble. The teachings he grew up with always felt exaggerated to him. Until now. Today, he realizes reality is far harsher than anything he was told. And for a moment, he can't help but wonder, will he even make it back alive? He thinks back to the moment he boarded that recruitment ship. It almost feels like everything since then has been some surreal dream. And yet, it's all real, isn't it? Images of Lu Sheng flash through his mind again and again. Someone who can instantly kill a 13th level, who also dares to throw punches at 14th level. The same person who once called him a friend. He shakes his head, letting out a quiet, self-mocking thought. It feels ridiculous. He's only 11th level. Basically the bottom of the barrel type of guy, the exact same reason he was assigned to be the janitor. Then suddenly, he spots another body. But something feels off. There are no visible injuries and the head is still intact. Limbs all there. So, how did this guy die? Before he can figure it out, the corpse twitches. Then it moves, and just like that, it stands up, startling Saya so badly he nearly jumps out of his skin. He looks closer and realizes it's Huang Ji, one of the recruits who came with them, the same one who disappeared early on. Meanwhile, Huang Ji casually greets him, but Saya immediately grows cautious. He had assumed Huang Ji got lost out here long ago, but somehow the guy had already returned to base, even joined the earlier battle, and apparently, quote-unquote, died. Something about him is quite sketchy. Saya demands to know what's going on. Huang Ji smiles, almost amused, and remarks that he didn't expect the young master of the Lilesa's family to still remember someone as insignificant as him. That only makes Saya more alert. He asks bluntly if Huang Ji was sent by them. Huang Ji doesn't answer directly, just tells him to guess. Then, without another word, he draws his weapon. At that moment, Saya realizes Huang Ji had been pretending to be a corpse all along, waiting for a chance to slip close when no one else was around. And no matter how you look at it, the guy is a 12th level with 3 rule galaxies, which meant this is bad. Really bad. But odd as it is, strangely though, instead of panicking, he feels rather calm. He asks, almost tiredly, that even after he willingly came to the outer space battlefield, they still couldn't leave him alone. Huang Ji runs his tongue along the edge of his weapon and remarks that Saya should already know the answer. Only the dead can truly put people at ease. Saya narrows his eyes and asks just how much they were paying Huang Ji to make him chase all the way out here and risk everything. Huang Ji answers 100,000 second-tier resource planets. The answer fascinates him, and he then lets out a self-mocking remark, saying it's his first time realizing his life is apparently worth that much. But Huang Ji shakes his head and tells him he's underestimating himself, and more importantly, underestimating what the Lilesa's family could offer. In the end, Saya asks what if he offered 1 million second-tier planets instead? Would Huang Ji let him go? Huang Ji bursts out laughing like he just heard the biggest joke of his life. He tells him plainly that if there's a next life, Saya should stop daydreaming. And with that, he moves in for the kill. Saya tries to say one last thing and tells him to wait, but the blade is already coming down. He braces himself, thinking this is it. But the strike never lands. A second passes, then another. Saya slowly opens his eyes, only to see Lu Sheng standing there, casually holding the blade with one hand. Our guy tells Huang Ji, almost lazily, that Saya clearly said, wait. So what, is he deaf or something? Once again, Rizlord comes through and saves the day. Huang Ji gulps nervously, instantly panicking, his voice even starting to stutter. Before he can react, Lu Sheng lightly twists his wrist, and the weapon snaps clean in two. Lu Sheng looks a little disappointed, telling him he should really learn to listen next time. Then he completely ignores him and turns toward Saya, while Halo rushes over right behind him. Lu Sheng asks what the punishment is for trying to kill your own people in the outer space battlefield. Halo explains that the military court of the 100-star sector would handle it, giving a fair judgment. Though realistically, it usually ends with exile into Fisher space, where people almost never make it out alive. Lu Sheng nods and says in that case, Halo can take care of it. And just like that, he tosses Huang Ji over like he's throwing out trash, landing him right in front of Halo. Now completely terrified, Huang Ji starts begging for his life. Halo doesn't even bother responding. He just kicks him hard, knocking teeth loose, then grabs him and drags him away. With that handled, things finally quiet down. Saya stands there, a little awkward, then asks the question that's clearly been stuck in his head. Are they actually friends? Lu Sheng looks at him, slightly annoyed, and tells him to cut it out. Why is a grown man suddenly talking all girly like that? That instantly makes Saya flush red. Then Lu Sheng asks about Tungsten. Saya explains that his recovery is going well. The base's medical tech is solid, so he should be back on his feet soon. Hearing that, Lu Sheng relaxes a bit and tells Saya to pass along a goodbye for him. Saya immediately knew this meant Lu Sheng was leaving soon. Lu Sheng briefly talks about his plans. Then, almost as an afterthought, he adds that honestly, Saya doesn't quite belong here either. That hits hard, and Saya took it the wrong way. His expression drops. He assumes it's because he's too weak, that he can't help anyone, that he just keeps dragging people down. First Tungsten, now Lu Sheng, and in his mind, that basically makes him useless. But Lu Sheng immediately shuts that down and tells him it's not about strength. He gives an example. If one day humanity goes to full-scale war against beasts, Saya might not be suited to be on the front lines, but he could be far more valuable handling logistics, support, and coordination. Saya seemed stunned. Lu Sheng adds that his instincts tell him Saya should go back to where he truly belongs, doing what he's actually good at. He tells him to think it over carefully. Meanwhile, he'll mention it to Makoto. And honestly, if Saya really chooses to leave, it wouldn't make him a deserter. If anything, he might even end up leading something important. Hearing all that, Saya is almost tearing up. If anyone else said it, he'd probably brush it off as empty motivational talk. But this is Lu Sheng, the most gifted genius in history. So somehow, it just feels true. Lu Sheng pats him on the shoulder, says he believes in him, then casually says farewell to his friend. And just like that, he lifts off into the air, heading off to regroup with the others. Saya stands there for a moment, looking at himself, and for the first time in a while he feels a bit more confident. After bidding farewell to Saya, our guy circles back and reunites with Halo. Now, to be fair, what he told Saya earlier wasn't just empty hype or some random motivational fluff. It actually had some weight. When Halo hands over Saya's background file, curiosity kicks in, and he ends up diving deeper into the dream world. Using the origin power, he runs a simulation and, well, the result is kind of wild. Saya, in the future, becomes an insanely successful businessman. His almost magical ability to connect with people, or how Lu Sheng would describe it, might just be sheer thick skin. It ends up carrying him far. His business expands beyond the heavenly serpent system, reaching far into other systems as well, and meanwhile, he contributes massively to the fight against the dark side universe. Of course, he notes that these simulations aren't guaranteed to reflect the true future. Still, it proves a point that Saya's definitely got talent. So he figures, if it's within his power, helping out a little is hardly a bad deal anyway. After that, he casually checks in on Tungsten in the recovery pod and remarks that the guy's healing pretty well. He then considers visiting Monroe, but, well, he remembers almost punching the guy to death. So he figures Monroe probably wouldn't be thrilled to see him, and he drops the idea altogether. Honestly, he doesn't have many people he knows anyway, and just like that, this short journey wraps up. On the day of departure, someone else tags along, none other than Orn Turing. Now, this prodigy, who's apparently one of the greatest talents ever produced in the 100 major star sector, suddenly becomes a little awkward. When he greets him, he even seems a little shy. Halo, noticing this, quietly tells our guy that Orn was known for his violent temper and difficult personality. And yet, here he is now in front of him, somehow like a nervous little bro. They shake hands, a bit stiffly at first, also a little awkward, until the sound of the spaceship engine cuts in and saves the moment. He observes the ship and can't help but feel surprised. For a base filled with so many powerful figures, the vessel looks pretty worn out. Honestly, it's only slightly better than the one used during recruitment. Then again, he reminds himself, in the outer space battlefield, ships are basically disposable, so he shrugs it off. After all, with the Makoto personally escorting them, there's probably no safer place around. Using his psychic power, he precisely senses Makoto's presence. He reflects that a 14th-level powerhouse is almost impossible to detect. He even notes that if the Oblivion Lord hadn't been tied down by Makoto back then, his punch might not have landed any real damage at all. The gap between him and the 14th level is still massive. Still, with such a cozy environment, he refuses to waste time. Then, he thinks about that uncertain future, the one that might collapse entirely. Honestly, he tells himself there's no room for luxury thoughts anymore. All he can do is push forward with everything he's got, chasing that tiny bit of hope. And yet, he finds himself missing home. Snowy, his parents, his younger sister, he wonders what they're doing right now. Using his psychic power, he even recreates their figures. If he wanted, he could interact with them, but he doesn't, thinking there's no need. Time flies, and before he knows it, a few months pass. When he wakes up again, he's already left the outer space battlefield. These months finally gave him the chance to settle down and fully digest everything he gained. The most surprising part is the golden core within him, which is somehow still growing, evolving, and even forming strange patterns. He can't predict where it's heading, so he just lets it develop on its own. Inside the dream world, he's been meditating the entire time. Now as he stands up, he stretches his body and remarks that after breaking through, he really needs a proper fight to test himself. But the question now is, who exactly should he fight? Using the origin power once again, he starts scanning through countless strong opponents. And soon enough, he finds someone who seems just right. The scene shifts to the Poluo star sector. The hatch slowly opens, and Tungsten looks out with curiosity at Saya's home planet. Saya, meanwhile, takes a deep breath, a hint of emotion slipping through as he welcomes him. This is home. He spreads his arms wide and declares that from here on out, it's time to properly enjoy their retirement break. Sounds great in theory. But Tungsten, well, he thinks otherwise. He tells him to look the other way. When he did, he wasn't expecting what was coming next. Out of nowhere, a swarm of reporters rushed in, shouting and welcoming their hero at the top of their lungs. Cameras flash non-stop. The crowd parts, and a man steps forward, representing the entire star sector, warmly welcoming their hero back home. Saya, however, isn't smiling. Not even a little. He recognizes the man instantly, Senator Hobart. No one knows this guy better than Saya does. The highest authority in the sector, who dressed sharply, speaking smoothly. But underneath, a complete snake. Saya reflects that the reason he was forced to join the outer space battlefield wasn't just family pressure. This man definitely had a hand in it too. Hobart walks up, all smiles, and pulls Saya into a warm, almost theatrical hug. He even deliberately calls out Saya's full name this time, mentioning the Lelesis family. Saya, meanwhile, only feels his irritation spike. Hobart notices that expression and subtly smirks, and that's exactly what he wanted. Then he turns to the crowd, hyping them up, asking if they can even believe it. He remarks that just a few months ago, this young master from the Lelesis family secretly boarded a recruitment ship to the outer space battlefield. Being only 11th level, he fought against unimaginable enemies. Hobart goes on, telling everyone how shocked he was upon hearing the news. Meanwhile, his performance screams seasoned politician, every word carefully crafted. And then, he adds, what's even more unbelievable is that this same young master survived months of brutal warfare, returned alive, and even brought back a distinguished third-class merit medal from the 100 major star sectors. The reporters go absolutely wild. Saya, on the other hand, is dying inside. He feels like his toes are about to dig straight through the floor from second-hand embarrassment. Before he can escape, reporters swarm him from every direction. Meanwhile, Hobart quietly turns and leaves. The moment he's out of the spotlight, he completely drops the act. He glances at his assistant and tells her to inform the Lelesis family that their carefully planned operation has failed. He emphasizes that their precious young master has returned, not only alive, but as a celebrated hero. He adds, almost lazily, that they should handle the situation themselves, as he has no interest in cleaning up their mess. The sheer killing intent in his tone makes the assistant stiffen instantly. She nods quickly, not daring to hesitate. By evening, Saya and Tungsten end up in a small bar. 1 jug of beer each. Saya lifts his and downs it in a single gulp, then slams it onto the counter with a heavy thud. He turns to Tungsten and warns him, "Don't trust that old bastard for a second. That man," he says, "is rotten to the core." Tungsten shrugs and replies that he never listens to politicians anyway, especially not when they're talking in front of a crowd, and Saya bursts out laughing. That's a relief, he admits. He was honestly worried that someone as straightforward as Tungsten might get manipulated. As he reflects, after Lu Sheng left, Saya followed his advice and got out of there too. What he didn't expect, meanwhile, was that Tungsten would follow him. And honestly, that means a lot. Having a solid brother like this by his side, it matters. Not to mention, Tungsten's strength isn't something to mess with. For now, at least, no one dares to make a move. But Saya knows better. This kind of safety is just temporary. And then he thinks of Huang Ji, and a chill runs down his spine. After all, for the people he's dealing with, finding another strong assassin is easy. Since they already sent people into the battlefield just to hunt him down, what's stopping them from doing it again? Now that he's left that place behind, he knows the methods coming his way will only get dirtier and more unpredictable. So he tells himself he has to move fast, figure out a way to break the situation before the other side fully reacts. Just as his thoughts start spiraling, Tungsten cuts in and asks whether they actually came here just to drink. Saya shakes his head and explains he's waiting for someone important. He adds, half unsure, that if he really matters to her, she should show up. Then, anyway, he lifts the jug again and takes another big gulp. That's when footsteps echo from the entrance. A girl walks in and calls his name. Saya freezes for half a second, then lights up instantly. He rushes forward and pulls Maeve into a tight hug. He tells himself he almost can't believe she's here. Maeve, meanwhile, looks just as stunned, saying she never thought she'd see him again. While the two lovebirds are enjoying their time, Tungsten, standing off to the side, seems to notice something. Saya soon pulls him over, proudly introducing his brother, explaining how Tungsten saved his life. Maeve listens, then shifts her focus to Tungsten. In the next second, Tungsten reappears right in front of her. He rubs his chin and remarks that from her reaction, she doesn't seem too happy about him saving Saya. Things got a little tense there, and Maeve freezes, panic flickering across her face. She quickly insists, stumbling over her words, that it's not like that. Saya immediately pushes Tungsten back, telling him to knock it off. He wraps an arm around Maeve and says she's the only person on this planet he truly trusts. Tungsten, meanwhile, doesn't want to ruin the mood. He chuckles, says it was just a joke, and apologizes. Saya is about to say more, but Maeve cuts him off and asks about what happened when he came back and whether his brother Wells knows about it. He clearly doesn't enjoy the topic, but still answers, saying he ran into Hobart the moment he got off the ship. He notes that by now everyone probably knows. Maeve seemed to have her own motives, then suddenly tells him to stay here, adding that she'll go gather some information. Saya immediately objected to the idea, calling it too dangerous, but Maeve shakes her head and tells him that for him, she's willing to do anything. Before he can argue further, she turns and rushes out. Saya curses under his breath and chases after her. At the very least, he tells himself he can walk her out. But by the time he reaches the door, she's already boarding a ship. He frowns, surprised that she's being so urgent. And then, the ship takes off instantly. Inside, Maeve's expression changes completely. Her voice turns cold as she gives out a set of coordinates, ordering the other side to mobilize a fleet immediately and fire a gamma cannon. She tells them to dump the responsibility afterward, blame the engineering department, make up some excuse like maintenance failure. She remarks that everything needs to be done within 1 minute. Then a creepy smirk spreads across her face. She notes to herself how ridiculous it is, some highly decorated veteran title. Since when would something like that ever scare the Lelesis family? Suddenly, Wells' projection connects. He asks if she met him. Maeve lights up again, nodding quickly. She tells him there was a small hiccup. She almost got exposed by that stone-looking guy, but fortunately, Saya is still as naive as ever. Even after surviving the outer space battlefield, he didn't suspect her at all. Wells lets out a low chuckle and asks what she plans to do next. Maeve, clearly excited, asks if this is the final test before marrying him. Wells swirls his glass and then starts laughing and tells her that she could think of it that way. Then he glances back at the screen, his tone shifting as he adds that he truly doesn't mind. After all, she used to belong to his brother. Maeve's expression changes instantly, saying she doesn't want to bring that up. She even says just thinking about her past with Saya makes her want to change bodies entirely. Holy crap, some NTR stuff is going on. Poor Saya. Wells seems pleased with that answer. When he hears her plan to use a gamma cannon, though, he notes that it won't be enough to kill a 12th level. Maeve calmly replies that she doesn't need to kill Tungsten, just Saya. And since he's only 11th level, she believes that's more than enough. Wells laughs again, remarking that she's far more suitable to be his countess than those shallow women. Then he asks, when does it happen? Maeve's face twists, then she announces now. The next second, a massive beam of energy crashes down from above, tearing into the planet's surface and shattering everything in its path. The two of them watch, almost admiring their own work, completely unaware that someone is right behind them watching. Saya stands there. Rage floods in, swallowing everything else. His jaw tightens, his whole body trembling, and through gritted teeth, he spits out the only words left in his mind. You damn bitch.
Saya and Tang Dun float in the vastness of space. Saya stares intently at a glowing blue holographic screen in his hands. As he stares at the screen, Saya begins to shake and cry, anguished that the woman he loved could betray him with an assassination attempt. Tang Dun approaches his distressed friend from behind, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder, trying to cheer him up. Tang Dun says it's better to discover a woman's treacherous nature before marriage, as a bad wife would have ruined his life. Saya's sorrow quickly turns into burning anger, and he quietly agrees with his friend. Clenching his fist in fury, Saya declares the woman isn't worth his feelings. He states that if he didn't have to remain hidden from his enemies, he would kill her and feed her to the dogs. He vows to endure for a few more days before taking his revenge. Having calmed down, Saya asks Tang Dun to accompany him to one last place. Saya explains they are going somewhere that will guide his destiny. The two then fly through space toward a massive, swirling purple cosmic anomaly. Meanwhile, in Lu Sheng's dream space, a ruined cityscape is overrun by zombie-like creatures. Suddenly, a massive pillar of blue lightning crashes down from the sky, shattering the ground and blasting the creatures away. Inside this storm of energy, Lu Sheng battles a giant, multi-eyed beast, striking it with a devastating punch to gain combat experience. During the fight, Lu Sheng senses a familiar, powerful energy spike. He realizes the Lord of Oblivion has arrived and welcomes it as a perfect chance to test his recent training. Back in the real world, inside a transport ship, Lu Sheng sits cross-legged, coming out of his deep meditation. He opens his eyes, his expression serious and focused on the coming threat. A panicked Hai Jia Dao rushes in, warning Lu Sheng that he's sensed the Lord of Oblivion approaching. Lu Sheng, remaining calm, stands up and adjusts his cuffs, simply stating that he already knows. Hai Jia Dao reminds Lu Sheng that with the stellar commander escorting them, they should be safe. He suggests they gather in the main lounge just in case. Lu Sheng seems unamused by the idea of three men huddling together for safety, but he agrees to go. In the ship's futuristic lounge, Lu Sheng, the elf prodigy Aonong Turing, and Hai Jia Dao gather as the vessel shakes from the powerful presence outside. A tense silence fills the room as the three warriors sit quietly, lost in their thoughts. With his eyes closed, Lu Sheng is unbothered, trusting the stellar commander's protection. He uses the time to focus on his cultivation, but Aonong Turing breaks the silence to start a conversation. Smiling nervously, the elf respectfully calls Lu Sheng brother and asks if his physical body has reached the legendary sovereign level. Lu Sheng gives the elf a deadpan look, finding it odd to be called brother by someone hundreds of years older. Despite the awkwardness, Lu Sheng realizes this is a good opportunity to learn more about the universe's power levels. Lu Sheng admits he only knows about the immortal level from his last test and asks the elf to explain the higher ranks. Sitting up straight, Aonong Turing explains that he has an immortal level bloodline. The next tier is sovereign, which is so rare there are usually fewer than 10 in an entire star system. As Lu Sheng listens with interest, the elf adds that a sovereign only appears once per 100 billion stars, though he doesn't know the levels beyond that. The conversation reveals the full hierarchy above the immortal tier: sovereign, ruler, and eternal. Standing nearby, Hai Jia Dao joins the discussion, explaining that beings with an immortal level body or higher are fundamentally different from ordinary people. Hai Jia Dao adds that they are like a higher species. However, he clarifies that despite their rarity, those at the immortal level aren't as overwhelmingly powerful as one might think, suggesting a huge power gap to the next tiers. Aonong Turing's pride is hurt. Hearing that his rare immortal bloodline isn't an absolute advantage at higher levels leaves the elf frustrated. Visibly annoyed, the elf prodigy demands to know what Hai Jia Dao means. Hai Jia Dao calmly explains that while an immortal bloodline provides a massive advantage in cultivation speed, there's a major catch. His expression turns serious as he states that once warriors reach level 13, the gap between immortals and regular cultivators quickly closes. Leaning back, Lu Sheng figures out the logic. He asks if this is due to the power of law, which Hai Jia Dao confirms. Hai Jia Dao explains that an immortal's early strength comes from a latent power of law they are born with. This allows them to easily defeat others, but everything changes after level 13. Lu Sheng realizes the grim truth for immortals. He points out that since every warrior must master the power of law to reach level 13, the immortal's natural advantage disappears. Hai Jia Dao notes, adding that any ordinary warrior who reaches level 13 can be considered a fully matured immortal themselves. With a smirk, Hai Jia Dao looks at Aonong Turing, noting this is why the elf couldn't defeat a level 13 opponent, despite his talent. The truth hits Aonong Turing hard. He mutters that his bloodline was just an early admission ticket, not a guarantee of power. He then asks how the sovereign level is different. Hai Jia Dao looks up, about to explain the mysteries of the sovereign tier. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure washes over the ship, interrupting them. Hai Jia Dao realizes the Lord of Oblivion and the Stellar Commander have finally started fighting for real. Unfazed, Lu Sheng's eyes narrow as he feels the shockwaves. He notes that the dark entity's aura is much stronger than before. On another planet, two cloaked figures walk down a dimly lit cobblestone alley. They are Saya and Tangdun. Saya pulls back his hood and says they have arrived at a place called the House of All Things. Tangdun pulls back his hood, looking confused by the strange name and asking how Saya found such a hidden place. Saya explains that half a year ago, after his father's death, he was ambushed by an assassin while drunk. He fled into this alley, where the owner of the shop saved him. Tangdun bluntly remarks that it sounds like a cheap soap opera plot. Saya reveals it was the shop owner who advised him to flee to the outer space battlefield. He notes that without her, he never would have met Tangdun or Lu Sheng. Saya admits they've avoided speaking Lu Sheng's name since returning. The warrior's power felt so immense that Saya sometimes doubts their encounters were real. As they finish talking, the heavy doors of the mysterious shop creak open before them. A striking woman with green hair, elf ears, and demonic horns emerges from the shadows. She smiles, welcoming Saya back and inviting them inside. Saya and an uneasy Tangdun sit across a desk from the mysterious witch, whom Saya calls Yin. Sweating, Saya desperately pleads for Yin's guidance. He confesses that he feels trapped by fate again and needs a way out. Yin closes her eyes and smiles. She gently tells Saya he isn't at a dead end. His true path has always been in front of him, but he has been too afraid to walk it. Saya and Tangdun are completely shocked and confused by her cryptic response. Without another word, Yin slides a rolled-up scroll across the desk to Saya, telling him it contains everything he wants to know. Saya nervously picks up the scroll and begins to ask what it is. With a sly smile, Yin pulls down her hat and tells him not to ask questions, urging him to return to where he came from. Saya slowly unrolls the scroll. As he and Tangdun read it, their expressions change to pure shock. The glowing text on the scroll gives a powerful prophecy. Meet the person you first knew. Return to where it all began. Take back what is yours. The one at the peak of the stars, wearing the crown, has already arranged everything. After leaving the mysterious House of All Things, Saya and Tangdun walk through the dimly lit, cobblestone streets of the town. Both men keep their cloaks drawn tight against the night. Tangdun looks at his friend, skeptically asking if Saya truly believes the witch's cryptic advice. Recalling Yin's demeanor, he notes that he sensed her martial arts strength to be only at level 10. Saya admits that, honestly, he isn't sure if he should continue to trust her guidance. However, he explains his desperate situation, stating that he has no other choice. He realizes his newly awarded title of military hero offers no real protection against the powerful Lyursus family. Frustration boils over as Saya clenches his fists, loudly complaining that the recent assassination attempt proves no one actually cares about his safety. Tangdun quickly tries to calm him down as nearby pedestrians turn to look. Sighing heavily, Saya laments that even the woman he planned to marry betrayed him without hesitation. Gripping the scroll tightly, a determined look crosses his face as he decides he has no option left but to follow the fate outlined in the prophecy. Saya begins to analyze the scroll's first clue, which instructs him to meet the person he first knew. He wonders if it means his first friend or a childhood playmate. Suddenly, a look of realization hits him, and he excitedly tells Tangdun that he might have figured it out. Stroking his chin in thought, Saya explains his reasoning. He concludes that the person he knew earliest in life must be his twin sister, as they were together in the womb before anyone else. Tangdun is completely caught off guard by this revelation, shocked to learn that Saya is a twin. Saya's excitement fades into worry as he explains the complication. His sister was taken away and raised by his mother's side of the family when they were very young. He admits that finding her will be difficult, as he has almost forgotten what she even looks like. Suddenly, Saya and Tangdun are startled by a bright flash of light and a loud rumbling from above. They look up in awe as a massive, highly advanced spaceship suddenly descends from the night sky right over the town. Panicking, Tangdun questions how a ship could warp directly to their location, while a terrified Saya fears that his assassins have already tracked him down. However, as Saya notices a glowing blue emblem on the vessel's hull, he recognizes it as an Axel-class ship. Sweating with confusion, Saya explains that this is the highest-grade private spaceship available in the entire Boluo star sector. He points out that not even he, the eldest son of the Lyursus family, ever owned one, meaning his ordinary pursuers couldn't possibly afford it either. A brilliant yellow beam of light shines down from the ship's underside, and the two men watch closely as a silhouette slowly descends to the ground. The figure touches down, revealing a woman stepping forward in elegant heels. The woman stands before them, exuding a regal and sophisticated aura. She has long, dark purple hair, sharp blue eyes, and wears a luxurious black dress adorned with white fur and green jade jewelry. Staring at her, Saya senses an inexplicable, familiar connection to the mysterious woman. His eyes widen in absolute shock as he tentatively calls out her name, asking if she is Pyre. The woman smiles warmly and closes her eyes, pleasantly surprised that he actually remembers her name after all this time. Opening her striking blue eyes, Pyre addresses Saya tenderly, calling him her long-lost brother. Frozen in disbelief, Saya realizes that the witch's prophecy has instantly come true, making him genuinely feel as though the goddess of fate is directly guiding his path. Meanwhile, back on the transport ship carrying Lu Sheng, the vessel continues to shake violently from the massive cosmic battle raging outside. Lu Sheng sits calmly beside the elf prodigy, Aonong Turing. Hai Jido stands before them, reminding the two young warriors that the stellar commander is currently fighting the Lord of Oblivion to ensure their safe passage, stating that they shouldn't just sit comfortably while under the commander's protection. Hai Jidao declares it is time for some special training. He intends to personally demonstrate the massive gap between level 12 and level 13 so they are prepared before reaching the academy. Eager for the experience, both Lu Sheng and Aonong Turing stand up to accept the challenge. As they walk, Lu Sheng reflects on his recent achievements. Although he has technically killed 4 level 13 entities, they were mostly mindless beasts and dream space zombies. He notes that he has never fought a true representative level 13 human elite, making him very curious to test Hai Jidao's actual strength. Hai Jidao leads the two geniuses down the ship's metallic corridors until they arrive at a heavy, blast-proof door marked as a training room. He explains that this training room is the only truly valuable part of the entire ship. It was personally reinforced by the stellar commander, making it durable enough to withstand the full power of level 13 experts. He adds that even if the rest of the ship breaks apart, this room will remain intact. Lu Sheng observes the room closely, silently noticing the impressive structural integrity and the lingering aura of the commander's power. Stepping onto the training floor, Hai Jidao draws his weapon as dark, powerful energy surges around his body. He looks at the two prodigies and asks who wants to fight him first. Lu Sheng and Aonong Turing stand in silence for a moment, exchanging a brief glance. Aonong Turing quickly steps forward and volunteers to take the first match. Lu Sheng casually smiles and agrees to let the elf go ahead of him. Inwardly, a nervous Aonong Turing admits his real motivation. He fears that if he watches Lu Sheng fight the level 13 elite first, the monstrous display of power will completely shatter his own confidence and ruin his fighting spirit. Moving inside the luxurious Axel ship, Pyre warmly invites Saya and Tang Dun, who have both removed their heavy cloaks, to make themselves comfortable. The three of them take their seats around a grand, elegantly set dining table in the ship's opulent lounge. Saya's expression turns serious as he immediately questions his sister, asking how she managed to track him down so quickly. Calmly sipping her hot tea, Pyre dismissively replies that locating him was not a difficult task at all. Saya silently realizes that this makes perfect sense, considering that their mother's side of the family actually possesses even greater power and influence than his own Larsa's family. Looking a bit apprehensive, Saya then asks his second question, wanting to know why she specifically came looking for him after all this time. With a warm and affectionate smile, Pyre states that the simple fact that he is her biological brother is reason enough. Her expression then turns a bit more knowing as she adds that, from what her intelligence gathered, his life hasn't exactly been going well lately. Before Saya can explain, Tang Dun eagerly interjects, completely confirming her suspicions. The massive warrior bluntly reveals to Pyre that Saya is doing terribly, explaining how he was just betrayed by the woman he deeply loved, who conspired with his greatest rival to cheat on him and attempt to murder him. Thoroughly embarrassed, a blushing and frantic Saya completely loses his composure, comically screaming at Tang Dun and demanding to know why he had to blurt out every single humiliating detail. Watching her brother bicker with his blunt friend, Pyre covers her mouth and lets out a soft, genuinely amused giggle. Pyre warmly comforts Saya, assuring him that his recent betrayals are no big deal because he will always have his dearest sister by his side to rely on. Despite the comforting words, Saya's expression turns serious. He tells Pyre that while he is genuinely happy to be reunited with his only sister, he wants her to be completely honest with him. Saya expresses his skepticism, noting that since they were separated as children, their blood tie alone wouldn't warrant such a grand rescue. He urges her to speak plainly and reveal the real, practical reason she sought him out at this exact moment. Pyre's playful demeanor shifts into a serious, intense stare as she asks her brother if he truly wants to hear the unvarnished truth. Saya firmly confirms that he does, while Tangdun sits quietly beside him, closely observing the tense family exchange. Dropping her act, Pyre explains that her mother's family recently intercepted some highly critical intelligence concerning Saya. Because of this impending situation, she was urgently dispatched to locate him and escort him to a specific destination. Saya is visibly shocked by this sudden revelation, prompting him to ask what exactly is going on. In response, Pyre simply snaps her slender fingers. Instantly, a massive holographic map of a planet projects across the table. Pyre reveals that the projection displays planet Myrdona, the ancestral homeland of the Lars's family, and announces that the official succession ceremony to appoint the new family heir is scheduled to take place there in exactly 1 week. With a fierce, determined look in her eyes, Pyre declares that her family sent her to bring him to that ceremony so he can violently reclaim absolutely everything that rightfully belongs to him. Saya, still processing the sudden appearance of his twin sister, asks Pyre if their mother's family intends to back his claim to recover his inheritance. Pyre shakes her head, clarifying that aside from providing him safe transport, the family will not intervene directly in the political matter. Frustrated, Saya questions how he is supposed to reclaim his birthright when his enemies already want him dead, fearing that returning now would be like walking straight into a trap. Standing up to leave, Pyre nonchalantly states that she only followed her given instructions and knows nothing more about their family's overall plans. However, before turning away, she cryptically suggests that her brother should think carefully about whether he has any other hidden advantages he has yet to use. Left to ponder her parting words, a confused Saya initially wonders what hidden card he could possibly have up his sleeve. Suddenly, his eyes widen as a realization hits him. He quickly pulls out the mysterious scroll given to him by the witch, Yin. Saya begins to connect the dots of the prophecy, noting that it instructed him to find the first person he knew, which was Pyre, and to return to where it all began, perfectly matching his upcoming trip to their ancestral homeland to reclaim what is rightfully his. However, he struggles to decipher the final clue regarding a crowned figure at the peak of the stars, wondering if it refers to his mother's influential family, or a different, unknown entity entirely. Overwhelmed by the cryptic puzzle, Saya clutches his head in frustration while Tangdun watches him with concern. Determined to find the answer, Saya abruptly stands up and orders his sister to turn the ship around, intending to go back and clear things up. Tangdun steps in, asking if Saya really intends to return to the alleyway. Saya confirms his plan, stating he needs to confront Yin to clarify the final line of the prophecy, believing it holds the ultimate key to solving his current predicament. Tangdun's expression turns grim, warning his friend that he is going to be disappointed. The massive warrior reveals an unsettling truth, explaining that just minutes after they had left the area, he had looked back down the street only to find that the enigmatic woman and her shop had completely vanished without a trace. Tangdun finishes by stating it was as if they had never existed in this world, leaving Saya reeling in absolute shock at the revelation. Meanwhile, on the transport ship, a fierce sparring match begins in the reinforced training room, marked by a massive, blinding clash of cyan and golden-orange energy. Pushing his limits, the elf prodigy Aonong Turing unleashes a relentless barrage of powerful cyan energy beams at his high-level opponent. Despite the fierce and rapid assault, Ji Dao remains completely unfazed, casually deflecting the intense energy blasts using only his sword. Watching from the sidelines, Lu Sheng observes the explosive clash and silently praises the elf's excellent combat talent. Analyzing the fight, he notes that Aonong Turing's immortal level status is genuinely impressive. He deduces that the unique green energy the elf controls is likely tied to a powerful law based on simulation and copying. He mentally compares the elf's abilities to a certain comic book superhero from his past life on Earth, noting the similarities in how both use green energy and rely heavily on their imagination to manifest constructs and boost their combat power. Deciding the demonstration has gone on long enough, Ji Dao tightly grips the hilt of his weapon as intense golden energy flares around him, firmly declaring an end to the exchange. With a swift, powerful swing, Ji Dao unleashes a devastating wave of energy that effortlessly cuts through Aonong Turing's cyan attacks. The elf prodigy cries out in shock as the overwhelming force easily breaks through his defenses. Staring at the glowing blade now halted inches from his face, a humbled Aonong Turing concedes defeat. He admits that the power gap between them is simply too vast, confessing he couldn't even manage to get close to the level 13 expert. Sheathing his sword, Ji Dao reassures the young prodigy that he will bridge that gap in time. He offers constructive advice, suggesting that the elf should abandon his flashy, superficial tricks and focus his training specifically on refining his strongest core techniques to significantly boost his overall combat power. Grateful for the guidance, Aonong Turing places a hand over his chest and respectfully thanks Ji Dao, acknowledging that he had been considering that very approach and has learned a great deal from the sparring match. Stepping forward, Lu Sheng casually asks Ji Dao if the experienced warrior was able to identify the specific type of law that the elf manipulates. Pondering the question, Ji Dao explains that many laws possess highly complex traits that defy simple summaries. He admits he can only roughly sense the nature of Aonong Turing's power but lacks the ability to describe it with absolute precision. Aonong Turing asks Ji Dao for his honest assessment, wondering if the instructor considers his specific law to be powerful. Ji Dao explains that since laws form the fundamental operating basis of the universe, no law is inherently weak. Instead, a law's true strength is entirely determined by how deeply a warrior masters and develops it. To illustrate his point, Ji Dao uses the concept of planetary gravity. He explains that gravity is not just a simple force but a universal physical law capable of causing massive destruction or sustaining a stable environment, depending entirely on how it is applied. Still curious, Aonong Turing presses further, asking whose law is ultimately stronger between himself and the instructor. Internally, Ji Dao acknowledges the harsh truth that laws definitely have distinct tiers of power, and the absolute gap between them can be massive. As Lu Sheng steps forward to take his turn, Ji Dao mentally notes that Lu Sheng's law of thunder is naturally an extremely dominant and powerful law. By comparison, he knows the elf's green law suffers from a crushing natural disadvantage, but he chooses to keep this to himself to avoid completely demoralizing the young prodigy. Shifting his focus, Ji Dao readies his stance and asks Lu Sheng if they should begin their match. With his eyes glowing a fierce golden yellow, Lu Sheng calmly confirms that he is ready. As intense golden and fiery energy erupts around him, Lu Sheng strategizes internally. He reminds himself that this is merely a sparring match, not a fight to the death. He reflects on his 7 emotions blade technique, which fuses 2 emotional laws and is lethal enough to easily slaughter level 13 beasts. Lu Sheng decides against using his strongest attacks, fearing that unleashing them would accidentally kill the instructor. Taking a horizontal floating stance across the room from his opponent, he resolves to carefully hold back and measure the output of his lesser techniques, hoping that will be sufficient for the spar. Crackling with golden lightning, Lu Sheng confidently warns the older warrior to be careful and advises him to stop the match immediately if the pressure becomes too much to handle. Gripping his sword as his purple aura flares, Ji Dao is initially insulted by the warning. He silently scoffs at Lu Sheng's arrogance, finding it ridiculous that he, the designated main instructor, is being told to watch his back by a student. However, Ji Dao's annoyance quickly fades into nervous apprehension as he breaks a cold sweat. He he suddenly recalls that Lu Sheng isn't just a talented rookie like Aonong Turing, but a genuine, battle-hardened expert who has successfully killed a level 13 general-class beast. Realizing the true threat he faces, Hai Jai Dao decides to take the sparring match seriously. He powers up, gathering a dense, swirling aura of dark purple energy around his legs as he prepares his assault. Seeing his opponent finally unleash his power, Lu Sheng's eyes glow with an intense golden light as he mentally notes that the fight is finally about to get interesting. Lu Sheng responds by unleashing his own overwhelming aura. The intense energy burns away his upper garments, revealing a glowing sun-like crest on his chest as volatile white and golden flames whip wildly around his muscular physique. Wasting no time, Hai Ji Dao lunges forward, his purple energy flaring aggressively as he closes the distance. He swings his blade with tremendous force, executing a devastating, high-level technique designed for absolute slaughter. The strike manifests as a colossal, blinding construct of destructive purple energy that illuminates the entire reinforced training room. The massive energy beam crashes directly into Lu Sheng, completely engulfing him in a point-blank explosion. However, as the destructive energy begins to dissipate, Lu Sheng is entirely unharmed, wearing a confident, mocking smirk. Hai Jai Dao's confidence shatters into pure shock. He stares in disbelief, unable to comprehend how his ultimate attack failed to inflict even a single scratch on the younger warrior. Standing tall amidst the fading remnants of the attack, Lu Sheng's dominant golden aura flares even brighter, showcasing the terrifying durability of his supreme physique. Instantly going on the offensive, Lu Sheng rockets high into the air, surrounded by a chaotic, swirling vortex of multicolored elemental energies, blending fire, lightning, and pure cosmic power. Drawing his glowing fist back, Lu Sheng prepares his counterattack, channeling the profound laws of his 4 seasons martial arts technique into a single, concentrated strike. He descends upon Hai Jai Dao like a blazing meteor, bringing down his fist. Staring up at the overwhelming godlike display of power about to crush him, a terrified Hai Ji Dao loses all of his previous composure, screaming in sheer panic as the devastating attack closes in. Lu Sheng unleashes a devastating punch, but stops short, sending a massive shockwave that blows Hai Jai Dao backward. The older warrior uses his large sword to anchor himself against the overwhelming force. Lu Sheng stands completely unfazed by the exchange. Hai Jai Dao is unable to comprehend the immense power he just witnessed. Aonong Turing watches the outcome in stunned silence. The elf prodigy is terrified. He reflects that while he knew the power gap would be absurd, he never imagined the result would be this extreme. Aonong Turing notes that even the mere aftershocks were unbearable, shuddering at the terrifying thought of what would have happened if Lu Sheng hadn't held back. Hai Jai Dao realizes that Lu Sheng deliberately stopped his attack out of fear of killing him with a single punch. Hai Jai Dao notes the dark irony of the situation, recognizing that his own ultimate, full-strength slash was less powerful than Lu Sheng simply halting his strike. Hai Jai Dao is further humbled by the realization that Lu Sheng achieved this overwhelming dominance without even using his true trump card, the Law of Thunder. Despite his absolute victory, Lu Sheng is disappointed. He thinks that he was very close to advancing his punch technique to the 6th realm but will have to wait for his next breakthrough. He notes that his comprehension of the 5 seasons punch has reached the absolute limit of the 5th realm, requiring just a little more effort to cross the final threshold. Lu Sheng considers that he could easily achieve the breakthrough by throwing a full-strength punch in the real world, but hesitates due to the severe consequences. He concludes that a full-power strike would not only destroy the heavily reinforced cultivation space, but would also instantly obliterate Hai Ji Dao. Lu Sheng reflects on his own strength. He realizes that having the power to effortlessly annihilate a level 13 expert before even reaching the 6th realm means his stellar law is far more powerful than he initially thought. He deduces that Hai Ji Dao's law is related to withering, giving Lu Sheng a natural and overwhelming advantage in their matchup. Lu Sheng asks the 2 humbled warriors what their plans are now. Hai Jai Dao admits that Lu Sheng no longer needs to participate in any special training. Lu Sheng accepts this without argument, telling them to continue practicing on their own as he leaves. Lu Sheng reflects on his future, eagerly anticipating his arrival in the Celestial Serpent Galaxy, realizing that the current 100 Great Star regions are now too small to contain his growing power and ambition. A noticeable tremor shakes the ship, putting Hai Ji Dao and Aonong Turing on high alert. The tension fades as Aonong Turing notes that the oppressive aura outside has vanished. He announces that they have finally crossed safely out of the outer space battlefield. Lu Sheng wonders how they managed to escape so quickly and questions what exactly happened with the Lord of Oblivion. Far away, Saya stands silently, dressed in an elegant, high-ranking military-style coat belonging to his family. He has reclaimed the luxurious and imposing appearance befitting the former young master of the Lyersis family. However, despite his regal attire, Saya is overwhelmed with deep anxiety and unease. His twin sister, Paisher, presses him for a decision, reminding him that the succession banquet begins in just 10 minutes. Saya is fully aware of what waits on the other side. Overcome with hesitation, he admits that he doesn't know if he can go through with it. Within a massive, luxurious mansion nestled in a lush forest on planet Myrdona, the ancestral homeland of the Lyersis family, Saya finds himself paralyzed by fear. Although he successfully made the journey back, he lacks the courage to leave his secure room. Pyre points out that the Lyersis family still doesn't know he has arrived, meaning he is safe for the moment. However, she challenges his cowardice, asking what good it will do to keep hiding. Pyre issues a harsh reality check. She reminds him that the Lyersis family's power and influence span across multiple star regions, making it impossible for him to simply run away and avoid their pursuit forever. Pyre lays out his only two realistic options. She explains that he must either flee across 10-star regions to hide under a fake name forever, or build a force even greater than the Lyersis family to return and conquer them all. Overwhelmed by the extreme nature of these choices, Saya tells her to stop talking. Saya rationalizes that a single person toppling an ancient business empire is a plot meant for fantasy novels. Accepting reality, he finally gathers his courage and declares that he will attend the banquet. Yin's prophecy flashes through his mind, reminding him to return to where it all began to claim his birthright. Saya solidifies his resolve, realizing he must face his family regardless of what any prophecy dictates. Saya leaves his room and descends the mansion's grand staircase. Tang Dun greets him, praising his friend for making the right choice to step forward. Saya is momentarily caught off guard by the enthusiastic support. Desperate for an edge, Saya demands to know if Tang Dun has uncovered some secret advantage or hidden knowledge about the situation. Tang Dun admits that he simply wants to try the luxurious banquet food and was worried he'd miss it if Saya stayed hidden. Saya's excitement instantly deflates at his friend's entirely food-driven motivation. Meanwhile, in the bustling banquet hall, the lavish room is packed with elegantly dressed nobles. President Hobart makes his entrance, drawing the attention and respectful greetings of the attendees. Guests gossip among themselves, discussing the death of the Lyersis patriarch 6 months prior. They note that tonight's banquet will officially decide the new heir, and that Wells is currently the undeniable frontrunner. Wells introduces his fiancée, Meifu, to President Hobart. President Hobart flatters Meifu, claiming her beauty outshines the stars. Wells acknowledges President Hobart's role in his success, admitting that he could not have secured his current position of power so easily without the president's corrupt support. President Hobart politely replies that he is always happy to support energetic young people who have a promising future. Hobart excuses himself, claiming he needs to speak with the president of the Obsidian Star region. Meifu remarks to Wells that the president's attitude seems rather ambiguous and non-committal. Wells explains that Hobart is a cunning old fox who avoids risky bets, only supporting Wells because he is the current presumptive heir. He adds that if a stronger candidate appeared, Hobart would abandon him without a second thought. Meifu informs Wells of recent intelligence indicating that Saya actually survived her recent assassination attempt and escaped. Unfazed, Wells reveals he already knows that the Baiyuesha family intervened to take Saya away, but asks Meifu if she really believes they intend to help him. Wells notes that while the Baiyuesha is indeed Saya's maternal family, he assures Meifu that they will absolutely not offer Saya any real assistance in reclaiming his title. When Meifu asks why, Wells explains that the Baiyuesha family are, at their core, calculating merchants. Viewing the situation purely as a business transaction, Wells details the merchant philosophy. Before making any investment, a true merchant calculates not only the potential rate of return but, more crucially, the actual probability of success. Wells asks Meifu to consider just how incredibly low the odds are of a failure like Saya actually managing to become the Lercea's family patriarch. At the elegant banquet, Meifu discreetly discusses Saya with Wells. Looking deeply serious, she thoroughly analyzes her former fiancé's character. She recalls Saya's gentle nature, such as cheerfully helping the elderly and caring for animals, but dismisses these traits as naive, foolish, impulsive, and ultimately weak. Meifu concludes that Saya completely lacks the ruthlessness required of a family patriarch, viewing him as a mere idle young master who falls far short when compared to Wells. She notes that Wells possesses a significant, necessary edge of ruthlessness that Saya glaringly lacks. Wells smirks, openly accepting her harsh assessment of his brother as a flattering compliment to himself. Sipping his wine, Wells reasons that no one would want a fool for an heir, a pragmatic reality the calculating Bayuisha family surely understands. He adds that even if they foolishly chose to support Saya, their nearest forces are 6-star sectors away, rendering them entirely useless for immediate intervention. Gesturing toward a group of distinguished elders gathered nearby, Wells asserts that over 80% of them already back his claim. He is confident they are not senile enough to let Saya take power, even if he were present. He states firmly that the family's fate cannot be entrusted to an incompetent failure simply by virtue of his birth order. Overcome by intense ambition, Wells crushes his wine glass. His aura violently flares red as he passionately declares that he alone is fit to lead the Lerce's family. Meifu gently grasps Wells' hands to calm his surging emotions, reassuring him that Saya's luck will soon end and promising to handle her former fiancé completely. Wells pulls her close, telling her she no longer needs to waste any effort searching for his brother. With a sinister grin and dark purple energy swirling around him, Wells reveals that their esteemed young master has already delivered himself straight into their hands. Meifu glances toward the entrance, her expression sharpening as she notices the arrival of unexpected guests. Saya and Tangdun make a grand entrance into the banquet hall, drawing the attention of the surrounding nobles, who silently part to let them through. As they walk, Saya appears highly tense and nervous, a stark contrast to Tangdun's calm, imposing presence. Saya's expression hardens, filled with grave apprehension about the inevitable confrontation with his family. Noticing his friend's anxiety, Tangdun cheerfully pats Saya on the shoulder, advising him to relax. He casually reasons that a mere banquet couldn't possibly be more dangerous than the deadly battlefields of outer space. Confidently guaranteeing Saya's survival, he tells him to chill out, as there is nothing to fear. Saya is left momentarily speechless, completely exasperated by his bodyguard's overly relaxed attitude in the midst of such a critical political arena. Watching from a short distance, Pyre smiles warmly, highly amused by the comforting dynamic between her brother and his loyal friend as they march forward. The two men suddenly halt their advance, coming face to face with someone blocking their path. Saya looks up to find Wells and Meifu standing together, presenting a united, condescending front. He tensely acknowledges his brother and his former fiancée. A wicked, mocking smile spreads across Meifu's face as she coldly expresses her surprise that Saya actually managed to survive her assassination attempt. Observing the massive warrior standing protectively by Saya's side, she calmly remarks that his exile to the dangerous battlefield clearly wasn't entirely fruitless. Filled with rage at the sight of his betrayers, an incredibly tense Saya furiously glares back, remaining completely silent. Feigning politeness, Wells tells Meifu that he is actually quite pleased Saya decided to show up today. He then confidently snaps his fingers to command the room's attention. The sharp sound draws the eyes of the banquet guests. Raising his voice, Wells patronizingly addresses Saya, claiming they used to be incredibly close and that it would have been a great pity had Saya missed such a joyous occasion. Wells then smoothly shifts his attention, respectfully greeting Payer and complimenting her as the beautiful flower of the Bayuisha family. Standing elegantly in her formal attire, Pyre silently acknowledges his greeting with a calm, composed demeanor. Sweating nervously with Tang Dun looming behind him, Saya clenches his teeth, frustratedly realizing that Wells is already comfortably acting as the undisputed successor of the family. Suddenly, Saya spots a familiar figure in the crowd, and his face lights up with immense relief and joy. He eagerly calls out to Elder Bosi, happily announcing that he has survived and finally returned home. Saya remembers Elder Bosi as the family elder who doted on him the most, a man who once served as his late father's trusted right-hand man. A large part of Saya's courage to attend the banquet stemmed from the desperate hope that loyal elders like Bosi were secretly waiting for him to reclaim his rightful place. However, Elder Bosi's expression remains completely cold and stern. Staring down at the young man, the elder bluntly states that Saya should never have come back, leaving him completely stunned by the harsh reception. Raising a dismissive hand, Elder Bosi delivers a crushing blow. He declares that Saya is no longer qualified to be there, revealing that the Elder Council officially voted 3 days ago to completely expel him from the family register. Saya is left utterly horrified and pale, reeling from the ultimate betrayal by his most trusted elder. The surrounding noble guests immediately break into excited gossip, shocked that the supposedly dead primary heir is actually alive and present. They eagerly anticipate the massive political drama about to unfold before them. Wells bursts into arrogant laughter, mockingly asking Saya how he could possibly win when the guests, the elders, and the council are all already under his control. Adding to the humiliation, Elder Bosi coldly waves his hand, ordering the guards to drag Saya away and lock him up until the banquet concludes so they can dispose of him later. As Pyre tries to step forward, 2 armored guards immediately cross their arms to physically block her path, leaving her visibly shocked. Elder Bosi issues a stern warning to Pyre, stating that despite her high status in the Bai Yuisha family, she has no right to interfere in the internal affairs of the Lerses. He advises her to remain a silent spectator if she wishes to avoid being thrown out. Seeing Saya completely paralyzed by the betrayal, Tang Dun urgently tells his friend to snap out of it, declaring that it is time for him to step in and forcefully carve a path of retreat. However, before Tang Dun can act, he is suddenly hit by a powerful, invisible force that lifts his massive frame off the ground in sheer terror. He quickly realizes another expert is present, identifying the attacker's oppressive aura as that of an overwhelming level 13. The attacker is revealed to be Mr. Wu, a blind martial artist in an orange tunic who serves the Lerses family. With just a raised hand, he effortlessly suppresses the level 12 bodyguard. As the guards aggressively grab and restrain him, a struggling Saya curses his luck. He recalls his late father mentioning the immense fortune the family spent annually to retain a level 13 martial expert, bitterly realizing that this ultimate weapon is now being used to capture him. Looking down at the subdued Saya, Wells gloats that he originally wanted his brother to witness his glorious ascension to power, noting with fake pity that Saya will no longer have the chance. Forced to the floor with a guard's hand crushing his head down, a despairing Saya questions the witch Yin's prophecy. He curses his own stupidity for believing in some grand destiny when it only led him straight into an inescapable trap. Suddenly, the scene shifts to the vastness of space just outside the planet, where a massive, glowing tear rips through the cosmic fabric. An enormous, majestic white spaceship emerges from the brilliant blue portal, exuding an aura of absolute authority. The colossal vessel descends directly into the planet's atmosphere, its massive hull casting a dark, overwhelming shadow over the Lerses family estate. Inside the banquet hall, the guests rush to the balconies, staring up in awe and terror at the gigantic ship blocking out the sky, wondering who could possibly command such a vessel. Mr. Wu's calm demeanor shatters into absolute panic. Sweating profusely, he recognizes the ship and yells out that it is the personal flagship of the Stellar Commander, signaling that the supreme ruler of the Star Sector has personally arrived. The entire crowd of nobles erupts into sheer shock and disbelief at the unimaginable arrival of such a legendary and powerful figure. Inside the banquet hall, the noble guests erupt into a frenzy. They rush toward the entrance in pure disbelief as word spreads that the Stellar Commander has arrived. As they scramble outside, people excitedly discuss the sheer magnitude of this event, noting that across the entire 100 Great Star regions, there are only 2 stellar commanders in existence. One guest explains that while one commander defends the outer space battlefield against alien beasts, the other rules over the star regions, making him the absolute highest authority among trillions of races. The crowd is completely baffled, wondering why such a supreme figure would ever visit their local gathering. Seeing an incredible political opportunity, an eager Wells urges Meifu to hurry and greet the commander with him, calling it a once-in-a-millennium chance. Elder Bosi enthusiastically agrees. He realizes that having the stellar commander present on the day of their family's power transition could elevate the Lairces family's status to unprecedented heights. The crowd swarms out of the mansion, while a frantic Elder Bosi laments that they did not have time to prepare a proper welcoming ceremony. Outside, a bewildered Saya is still pinned down by the guards, muttering in shock about the stellar commander's sudden arrival. One of the guards forces Saya's face into the pavement and steps on his head. He cruelly tells Saya to keep his head down, claiming he is unworthy of looking at the supreme leader and warning him not to offend the VIPs. A colossal spaceship hovers above, projecting a brilliant beam of light down to the ground. The entire crowd of nobles, including the Lairces elders, drops to their knees in absolute reverence as a figure slowly descends within the light. The figure touches down, revealing the imposing red-haired stellar commander, Ling Bu. As the kneeling crowd respectfully welcomes him, the stellar commander begins to address them. He tells everyone to rise and casually explains that he heard the Lairces family was appointing a new patriarch today. He states he came specifically to offer his congratulations, politely asking if his uninvited presence is an intrusion. Overjoyed, Wells believes the legendary stellar commander has arrived just to honor his succession. Elder Bosi shares this immense excitement. Sweating but smiling broadly, he marvels that their modest family could receive such an unimaginable privilege. The surrounding nobles are equally stunned, murmuring among themselves that the Lairces family is undeniably destined for unprecedented glory. Rushing forward to greet the supreme leader, Wells and Elder Bosi quickly assure the stellar commander that his presence is absolutely no intrusion. Internally, Wells is ecstatic, convinced that his ultimate rise to power is now guaranteed. Watching from the sidelines, Meifu is thoroughly pleased with herself. She gloats internally, certain she made the right choice by abandoning Saya for Wells, and fantasizes about becoming the queen of a powerful new era. The stellar commander smiles calmly, expressing his relief that he isn't interrupting their proceedings, while an eager Wells laughs in agreeable submission. However, the stellar commander suddenly asks to see the new patriarch, casually referring to him by the name Saya Lairces. Wells's arrogant facade instantly shatters into pure shock as he stammers his brother's name in utter disbelief. A dead silence falls over the entire crowd. Elder Bosi and the other nobles freeze in complete confusion. Even the armored guards pinning Saya to the ground are bewildered, questioning if the supreme ruler actually just asked for their captive. Seizing the brief moment of distraction, Saya strikes the guards, breaking free from their grip and demanding they let him go. As Wells turns around in panic, Saya sprints forward through the crowd, raising his hand to draw the stellar commander's attention. He desperately announces his identity. Finally reaching the center of the gathering, Saya stops to catch his breath, panting heavily from the exertion of his escape. The stellar commander smiles warmly and reaches out, firmly grasping a stunned Saya's hand in a highly respectful handshake. While shaking his hand, the stellar commander sincerely congratulates the young man, declaring that the starry sky will remember this momentous occasion. Saya is visibly bewildered by the endorsement, while Wells watches from behind, his face twisted in utter shock. Desperate to salvage his carefully laid plans, Wells steps forward and frantically objects. He claims there has been a terrible mistake and insists that he is the actual new patriarch of the family. Meifu eagerly chimes in from behind, echoing his protests. The stellar commander completely ignores their frantic corrections. With a calm, dismissive expression, he simply asks the crowd if there happens to be a second person named Saya Lairces in the area. Wells is left completely speechless and terrified. Standing tall with absolute authority, the stellar commander formally declares that there is only one person he acknowledges as the true patriarch of the Lairces family. Placing a supportive hand on Saya's shoulder, he firmly states that the title belongs solely to Saya. He then delivers a chilling ultimatum, warning the gathered crowd that if they choose anyone else as their leader, it will only prove one thing. With his eyes glowing a menacing red, the stellar commander's demeanor turns deadly serious. He threatens that choosing anyone else would mean the current members do not represent the true will of the Lersis family, heavily implying he will wipe them out if they defy his choice. This heavy implication terrifies the crowd. Elder Bosi and the other family members freeze in absolute fear, realizing that defying the stellar commander means the complete annihilation of their entire lineage. Instantly abandoning his loyalty to Wells out of sheer self-preservation, Elder Bosi raises his fist high. He loudly swears upon the family's glory that Saya will immediately be named the new patriarch. The rest of the opportunistic nobles follow suit without hesitation. They raise their fists and begin enthusiastically chanting Saya's name, instantly accepting him as their new leader to appease the stellar commander. Saya stands silently in the center of the cheering crowd, completely overwhelmed by the surreal turn of events. Pyre approaches her brother, her usual calm composure entirely broken. Looking at him in sheer astonishment, she asks how he possibly managed to secure the personal backing of the Supreme Stellar Commander. Crushed by the sudden reversal of fortune, Meifu collapses to her knees in tears, realizing the catastrophic mistake she made by betraying Saya. In a desperate fit of rage, she lunges at Wells, grabbing him by the collar and blaming him for ruining her future. Meifu slaps Wells hard across the face, furiously screaming that all the power and glory he just lost was originally supposed to be hers to share with Saya. Enraged by the assault, Wells violently punches Meifu back. He curses her as a pathetic gold digger and harshly reminds her that she was the one who willingly threw herself at him for power. Ignoring the chaotic scuffle between the former lovers, a deeply confused Saya turns to the stellar commander. He politely admits that he does not actually know the supreme leader and questions why he intervened on his behalf. The stellar commander smiles warmly and tells Saya to thank the good friend he made on the dimensional battlefield. He explains that this friend wanted to ensure Saya was well taken care of, but since he could not leave the battlefield himself, he entrusted the task to the commander. Saya's face lights up with sheer excitement and awe as everything finally clicks into place. He recalls the mysterious witch Yin's prophecy, realizing her cryptic words have been flawlessly fulfilled. Overwhelmed with profound gratitude, Saya realizes that Lu Sheng was the one who orchestrated this triumphant return. He understands now that Lu Sheng is the prophesied crowned figure at the peak of the stars who arranged for his absolute victory from behind the scenes.